Hello, welcome to Retro Toy Princess. I'm Allison Troy, and my guest today is Ed.
What's up?
So some of you may not recognize Ed because he's better lit today than normal. It's funny, Ed. One of the first times I saw an actual picture of you that wasn't from like Oz's clubhouse, I was like, wow, like he looks like a person and not a shadow in a chair. So congratulations.
Well, thank you.
And so
I
Ed
do
does
enjoy
have.
my chair. It's a very comfortable chair.
Well, yeah, no, and no crimes against having a comfy chair for like 6 to 7 hour live streams.
Yeah.
So, but it was just funny. Really quick, we do need to remind everyone today: Moby is trash. Just in case you forgot, Moby hasn't, but I just don't want anyone else to forget. So
Yeah, I'd never forget that.
yeah, we can't. You can never forget that Moby is trash. All right, let's see. We'll hop in really quick. Let's see. We've got. Oh, Andrew is in the chat, and yeah, exactly. Krull is definitely on the table. I've had these for a while, and Ed had mentioned Krull at one point, and I'm like, that's a good time for us to do some Krull. I like at least to sort of premiere stuff. That's why Andrew got to do Visionaries for his first solo outing with me. So.
Oh yeah, Visionaries is good too.
Yeah. Well, and it was also the same week he released his episode on the unreleased ladies of Visionaries. So it was a good, gotta love the synergy with the YouTube. So
Yeah,
anyway.
the Krull is one of those properties. As a kid, I always wished they had a toy line. They never did, but
all I remember, yeah, like it was one that I really was surprised there weren't toys for. It felt like I wanted sort of the princess. Obviously, I wanted the princess like in her dress and like that was one of the ones where I was always like, why aren't we getting like a doll of her? Because
yeah,
like that hair would have been combable, a big fancy dress. Something. It always felt like it was a bigger movie than I guess it was because I don't know. It was just a cool
I
movie.
think it just got lost in the blur of everything because it came out right around the same time that there was a ton of sci-fi stuff coming out, a ton of fantasy stuff coming out, and it was just
Well, it's like what 82, 83, so it
yeah,
hit right.
yeah, it got lost in the noise.
Yeah, right between Empire and Jedi, because it was way more Star Wars-y sci-fi than it was other sci-fi. So to me, I always
that was probably the
loved it.
biggest draw for me was that it was kind of like a sci-fi film, but also fantasy based at the same time. So it was like
it had sort of, and I don't know, like the tone of it. I just always liked. I always thought it was good. The bad guy was really creepy. I thought.
Yeah.
I just
There was a good message at the end of it, all right. Love conquers all. I mean,
love conquers all. There was the creepy spider lady, and then all kinds of good stuff. So
the spider lady, I definitely really enjoyed, and the fact that she was like the love of the wizard or whatever he was, his life and all that was a little twist. So.
It was. I think thinking back, sort of now, what I think why it worked was it was very much sort of like your classic swashbuckling type adventure, like sort of updated where like you've got your Magnificent Seven-esque team of people, and each one gets their little bit of the story. Nobody's completely left out, and you get all kinds of cool monsters and stuff and creatures that remind you of
like the fire horses. Those were awesome.
Yeah, it's just overall cool. Like,
and I think at the time, right, it was like you said, it was very, very inspired by Star Wars. I mean, like the troops that came in and took over the castle and the princess were totally stormtroopers, and
but they were kind of cool because they were like all black and sorry, I have a cat that was like demanding some attention. So.
And they all have laser guns, and the other guys are fighting them with swords. It's kind of like Jedi against.
Yeah, it was this nice sort of because at first you do sort of with the way it's set up, you do think you're getting sort of swords and typical swords and sorcery, and then the sci-fi element kicks in. And
yeah, for sure, it's pretty good.
Cool. So really quick, let's just for the people watching, Ed had picked two different pages. This one with Cyclops and Colwyn and the dog collar guy. That's what I always called him as a kid. And then he also had this one of Colwyn diving into the river with the guards. I did water. Was it last week? Yeah, I think so. Last week was Aaron the toy enhancer, and we had water in that one. So I wanted to go with this. Plus, it's a Cyclops. I don't get a lot of, other than Triclops and Masters of the Universe, I don't get a lot of chance to color Cyclops.
Cyclops was my favorite character in that movie. I was absolutely just obsessed with him when I was a kid. Of course, I really liked the Sinbad movie with the giant Cyclops from Harryhausen. That was.
I've just been doing research on those for reasons. We'll talk about it after. I'm not really in a place where I want to talk about it.
Yeah.
In a few weeks, I'll be able to talk a bit more about that. But I've been researching those because those are sort of a gap in my own sort of knowledge.
I love the whole Sinbad saga, and
I've not seen them, but because I've been researching them, I'm now going to have to check them out because they just look.
They had some on YouTube you could watch for free, and then on Tubi they had a bunch of them. And
yeah,
Tubi also had
between Tubi and YouTube. I found some of those, and then not all of those. So
yeah,
really quick, I'm going to pop in because we've got a few more chat people who are joining us. Good morning, Payne. Lovely to see you, sir.
What's up, Payne?
Yeah, exactly. Like the cast of this, Liam Neeson is one of the sort of band of heroes. Like it's really good pedigree. Good morning, Briscoe. I just realized how southern I sounded when I said Briscoe. There are just some words you can't say without.
You can't say Briscoe without sound.
You just can't say Briscoe. It's like brisket.
Yeah.
You just can't say it. It's like rural. I cannot say rural without it sounding southern. Otherwise, it's like on 30 Rock with rural juror. And then, good morning, Thanos. Lovely to see you as well. And then, yes, everyone saying hello to everyone. I love seeing that. Anyway, before I got distracted, Cyclops. He scared me at first. At first when he showed up, I was creeped out by him. And then he was, of course, a good guy. So I almost feel like they structured it that way. So some kids would be a little scared of him and then realize he was a good guy. Don't judge it by its cover stuff.
So. Yeah, when he first came on the scene, though, he was kind of like mysterious. So you didn't know if he was good or bad. And then
like they did frame it so that it could play either way. Really quick before I forget, because I am likely to, because I'm a talker, as you guys have noticed. What are you coloring with today, Ed?
Well, today I'm coloring with Crayola pencils, and I have a few other ones thrown in there because I didn't realize it until yesterday when I was looking for my pencils that my son, who is now stationed in Texas somewhere,
nice.
He has my Prisma pencil set, and of course I don't. He's in basic training, so I can't like just call him and ask him, "Hey, dude, where's my pencils?" So
right.
So I am dealing with the Crayola, which is fine. They work.
They are actually as much as sort of. It's funny because when I first started doing the whole adult coloring thing, I would go online to YouTube, right, and watch videos, and there are a lot of like. I don't want to call them hate videos because that's sort of giving them a little bit more power and authority than they were. But there was just a lot of shade being thrown at Crayola. And I leaned into it because, like in college, it's really like Prismacolor is what you want and, or something more expensive. And I had a bunch of Prismacolor anyway because when I tried, we don't talk about it because it was not it did not quite work for me. But I tried to do an online comic in like the late 2000s.
Oh, cool.
So I had I had a bunch of Prismacolors left over from that.
What was the comic about?
It was a serial killer lesson clown.
Oh, cool.
And then a slutty witch. So they've not necessarily aged well. It was very edgy of the time. And now I look back, I'm like, ooh, this one's probably not. I probably shouldn't release this one in any form because,
Is
yeah,
it something you could update to be more
there are ways to
appropriate?
update it, and I have looked into ways to do that. A lot of the stuff with the lesson clown, I could probably update. There's just a few tweaks that would need. Um, and and this isn't as an indictment or like, oh my god, we can't be funny or tell jokes anymore. I'm sort of the thought there are a few jokes that we used to be able to tell that we shouldn't have been able to tell because we just didn't know any better, and now I know better, and I get where certain types of humor, um, the negativity that they feed, and that's not what I want to put out in the world. So it's not that like, oh, I don't want to get canceled. It's that I have chosen not to put certain energies into the world. There are some people who would happily
Our
reinvest their time and energy there.
Yeah, our age group is really hard because the things that we grew up with are so different than they were back then, right? I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
there was just a lot. I mean, it was on, TV, it was on everything,
Mhm.
I mean, it was
Yeah.
just the way of the world. And it's like,
Yeah,
was it acceptable? Yeah, it was acceptable. Should it have been? It's hard to say,
probably
right?
not, right?
But I mean,
Yeah,
I
and
feel the
there's like,
same way kind of about like Mark Twain's books, when he uses like the N word in some of those
yeah,
books.
right.
Now, is the word appropriate? No. Should it ever been treated that? People have been treated that way? No. But
Yeah,
that was the way it was back then. So we
yeah.
can't just erase that because then you just make the same mistake again.
Well, it's funny because people sort of there's some people who go really hard. I find a lot of the people who go really hard on sort of like, oh, let's get that book banned or whatever, what have you, are not the people. One, it's not people that it actually impacts. Usually, it's often, well, I can say this is it's overreactive white women in a certain
Yeah.
age group, right? And it's not because they necessarily or are invested in, like, say, racial equality or sort of any of the underpinning issues there. It tends to be because they don't want to deal with it, so it's easier to just make it go away, which makes it worse. um
Yeah. I
and
had a good laugh when all those riots were going on and I'd see like a black policeman getting screamed at by some white college girl about how he's a racist pig. And I'm thinking to myself,
right, like, yeah, like, you need to, like, even if there is, say, some self, what you call it, if there's some self-hatred going on for a black policeman, it's not up to the white college girl to go call him out.
right,
She needs to go call out the white people. Like, I'm a big fan of calling your own people into you and having that discussion with them. And like, it's way more effective if I talk to other white people than if they
right.
get screamed at by, like, a person of color. Like, because they're more somebody with that mindset's more willing to listen to me than to them.
Right.
And it's also just not your place to yell at somebody about their internalized racism if they're a person of color. Like, girl, go talk to your mom and dad, because I'm gonna bet your mom and dad are a big problem. But not to we're getting a little further into that than which is just a way to say, like, my feeling with Mark Twain though is you'll remember these. Remember the illustrated classics?
Oh, yeah.
Or like comic books. That's how I read Mark Twain the first
Yep.
time as a kid. You know what
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't have? The N word. Why? Because somebody went and edited that for a child audience.
Yep.
So I'm of the mind that there's nothing wrong with making high school editions, you like
No.
middle school editions, child editions of all
Yep.
these books. And then if you give these sort of to kids to read so they can be familiar with these stories, and then when they get to college and they've sort of learned enough to be critical thinkers, then you can say, here's the unedited original 1800s version, and here's what it says, and here's why we don't do that anymore, but it's of the time, so that at that point they're exposed to it with the
I have,
ability to think.
yeah, I have that problem with a lot of like having kids that are all 18 to 25 right
Yeah,
now. It's like my one daughter is very like she's not a self thinker. So if she sees it on TikTok or on one
yeah,
of her social medias, it's legit, right? And I'm always
yeah,
challenging her to think
exactly.
for herself. And she comes up with these like things. And I give her credit because she's very, very much about, everybody having equal rights and,
Mhm.
all that stuff, which is great. But it's like, you also got to think for yourself that just destroying stuff or whatever, or just forgetting that stuff actually happened is not a good thing.
You can't.
Correcting it is a good thing, but forgetting
Yeah.
about it is not a good thing.
Yeah, you can't pretend things didn't happen because that doesn't make it better. And this is some of this I think for Gen X, because we're both Gen Xers. Um yeah, there's sort of the joke like we were feral, we were left to our own devices. And it's true to a degree. We were
Yeah.
raised by boomers, or some of, like, my parents were super young, so mine are right at the cusp of baby boomer and like, yeah, about 4 or 5 years before Gen X. But at the same time, like, there's sort of that cusp of it where it's my parents were young enough that they were, like in their teens when like my mom was 15, my dad was 17, and then like they both turned 16 and 18 right after I was born. I mean, this was my dad was in the army when I was born because it was back then. You could still, as a 17-year-old,
Oh yeah, yeah.
you were 17, you were of legal age, you could join, right?
Yep.
Um, so they were quite young. So like that made a difference because they had been raised by a silent generation. Like my grandmother, on my mom's side, for instance, was we didn't call it bipolar back then, but that's what it was, and she just didn't care. And so we were sort of right, like I would go stay with my grandparents, and my grandma worked at Fort Hood military base as a secretary. She was a working mom before it was cool. She definitely back in the day got a lot of shit for being neglectful of her kids, but my grandfather was an army scientist working for what became NASA, and but didn't branch off into NASA. So of course, none of his patents are his.
But I love that whole thing about like the mother staying home, right? Because it's like now
Yeah,
my mom was a stay-at-home mom, but like my grandmother was a stay-at-home
yeah,
mom too. But she was never home because she was always out playing cards or at the bar drinking and everything.
yeah.
So it
Right.
didn't matter.
Yeah, my mom was a stay-at-home mom until she wasn't. I was fortunate because she was a stay-at-home mom for most of my childhood, and by the time she wasn't, and she like suddenly was like off doing stuff, I was in high school, and it was good that she would go away for
Yeah.
hours and
Yep.
hours.
Yep.
My brother was 6 years younger, so he's got some. And if my brother is watching, I'm sorry, I'm throwing our family business out into the universe, but whatever. Mom is no longer with us. Um, she would be mad, but she can't do shit. If she wants to prove her existence and the existence of an
That's right.
afterlife,
Yep.
let her. Like, I challenge you, mother. Let me know. Let me know you're unhappy. Um, so he has a really different impact. I loved being, we lived in Louisiana in the swamp for a big part of it, and I would just sit there for hours. I'd be throwing rocks at alligators. I would go out and find sort of these. There are a lot of bamboo overgrowths. I don't know how the bamboo ended up in Southwest Louisiana in the swamp, but it was there. And the fun thing is, if you rip a bamboo out of the ground, the root of it looks like Tila's cobra staff. So I had lots of cobra staffs as a kid to play Tila. But
We did
I
that
would
with
throw
corn
rocks at
cobs.
alligators. I would jump over like canals if I couldn't find, or sometimes you drag a 4x4. I go make these. I made a crystal castle one time out of one of the bamboo growths. I went inside, hollowed it out because I'd watched the Blue Lagoon, right?
Well, of
Probably should
course.
not have watched the Blue Lagoon at my age, but whatever. But from that, I got the idea to make a crystal castle for myself out in the woods that was my size. It was not stable structurally, but
Oh, we built plenty of forts that were
yeah,
not
right.
stably structured.
And I had extra Shiras because I would babysit and do money to buy. So I just kept buying wave one over and over. And I had Shiras that I kept in my crystal castle. Or probably, well, they're not after all the hurricanes, but they were probably there for a really long time until it all overgrew because I did not go and get those when I got too old to go out there because puberty and boys. But I don't. So like I have that, and I sort of, on the one hand, I do feel bad for all of the kids who have helicopter parents and don't get any freedom. But I also think about all the times I nearly died because of all that freedom. So I don't.
It's a really hard middle ground to find because like I had to
Yeah.
struggle with that with my kids. It's like I don't want you to get hurt. I don't want you to do the stupid shit that I did when I was a kid because I did a lot of stupid stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because my parents were like, "Oh, they're just going out to the woods. What kind of trouble could they get in?" Yeah, well, I started smoking cigarettes when I was 10, and
Yeah.
we'd find like people's camps and in the middle of the woods that had a stash of Playboy magazines when you're 11 and you're like, oh my god, look
Yeah.
at this,
Right.
it's amazing, right? It's like,
But no context to it. So
right,
like,
but then I think it's like you got to balance it because I know the guy that used to be my boss, he was like a really strict parent, and I'd seen so many kids that I grew up with that had strict parents that as soon as they got away to college, it was like a free-for-all.
yeah.
They had no idea how to function in the world for real.
Yeah, I was a lot more better behaved because I was not, not as parented as I should have been at times. I mean, not that like my mom would sometimes remember that it was dangerous and that usually when it was never, there was that whole like, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are? Once it
Yep.
got dark, if we weren't home, that was when my mom would
Yeah.
sort of come alive. So I think that's kind of what helped me. Unlike, I do have friends though who their parents just never cared. They would be at our house. My mom would have to be like, "Don't you have a home you need to go to?
Yep.
Stop eating all of our food." Like I had a few friends like that.
I remember it was one of my dad's biggest things. Like if we stayed at a friend's house, it was one day because you're not overstaying. You're welcome. And it's
Yeah,
just like,
right.
because your friends aren't staying here for more than 2 days or more
Yeah,
than, one day
exactly.
overnight. So you're not staying there. And it's like, yeah, but dad, they really want me to stay. It doesn't matter. You're not
I
staying.
remember I had a friend in high school and I would go spend weekends there. And my mom put a kibosh to it as soon as she realized my friend had babies. And it wasn't because she was afraid I was going to end up with babies. It was because she realized my friend was using me as a free babysitter.
Oh, yeah.
Because my friend was 18 and at the time could get into bars because the drinking age in Louisiana at that time was 18. So I would go there the week and we would have a house party like on Friday night where like I could participate at the house party. And we would sometimes go driving. Do not judge us for drunk driving in the 80s.
No, that was just
Um,
a way of life.
It was FU to Nancy Reagan, guys.
Mm-hmm.
We have to. Some of us only did drugs and drank to FU Nancy Reagan because that Pez dispenser ahead of hers. But
You watch some of those anti-drug commercials nowadays, it's so cringeworthy. It's not even funny.
it's really bad. Well, I always thought they were. I mean, that's the thing. Like, there's some stuff we watch now, and we're like, "Oh my god, what was wrong?" There's a lot of stuff back. I was just ahead of my time, I think. But there is some stuff I watched then. I'm like, this is ridiculous. There are a lot of sitcoms and stuff that people like really loved, and they're like, and I didn't watch. Like I love The Facts of Life, but I did not watch the.
Bless you.
Yeah, that's Matt. So, Matt, everyone says bless you. Matt's home today. So anyway, like I love The Facts of Life, but I did not watch Facts of Life after like 10 or 11 because at that point it was baby stuff. So
I was never a big fan of Facts of Life. My mom watched Facts of Life, and I never
it
got
was kind of a girls' show. I mean, not to gender stuff, but
I mean, of course, back then, right? Like people laugh, but after other than Friday night after 8 p.m., you weren't allowed to watch TV in my house. That's just the way it was, right? Unless it was some like Wizard of Oz was on or some Christmas special or something like that. After 8 o'clock, you were done. The TV was mom and dad's.
As soon as MASH came on, that was when I knew it was over. And it was okay. I didn't like MASH. Really quick, I'm going to pop over to chat. Say hello, Duchess.
Oh, hi, Duchess.
Thank you for popping in. We have arrived. Nolan has joined us. Hello, Nolan. Thank you for making it legit. We're now legit, everyone. Nolan has arrived. Good morning, Todd. Welcome. Thank you.
Damn
Ken's,
Gen
yeah,
Xers.
exactly. Ken's totally Gen X, whatever.
Yeah, we
We
definitely a damned generation.
Hello, Alex. Good morning. Good to see you. Let's see who I'm missing. I think that we're caught up on everyone. Yeah, Todd, a lot of it is. Um, ironically, a lot of the helicopter parents who don't let their kids go out anywhere are the ones whose kids get into nonsense on the internet.
Yep.
Yeah, we did almost die every other day. There's a great TikTok I was watching the other day. There's a big Gen X thing happening on TikTok right now, which is cool to see. Some little zillennial did a. If we're gonna generalize, Generation X is the worst generation. So of course, I guess assuming we're not on TikTok, it's like we just don't make TikToks like you guys do. We do other. I'm on, like I put all my coloring shorts up on TikTok, but I don't like make content, like about stuff on TikTok. That's for the kids.
Yep.
Like I don't like going on and watching. I watch a lot. Surprised, I'm sure, to no one based on sort of conversations I have. I watch a lot of anti-racism TikTok, predominantly by if it's about black issues, it's probably black women or black men that I watch. But I don't like necessarily comment because I don't have anything to add to their
Right.
experience. I'm just
Yeah.
there to learn and like do better. So I don't have a huge footprint in that way until it's Gen X. Like remember Dina, the hip hop lady? Now that's hip hop. I'll send you you'll remember her ad if I send you the link because she was huge in the 90s for a while. Anyway, somebody dressed as her as Halloween and resurrected the video. Now the real Dina is back on TikTok making videos. So, and that's what I'm there for. I'm there for I'm there for the Gen X stuff, our ironic, sarcastic, dark humor, like.
The other problem is it's like most of the stuff that's on TikTok, that's like the content that these younger kids are creating. Like my daughter creates stuff with her friends all the time, and I don't even understand half of it. I'm like,
yeah.
But then I show her something that I find hilarious, and she's like, "That's not funny, Dad." I'm like, "Well,
yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that I just, like a lot of the kids will do the dance videos, and unless it's to a song I like or it's one of our songs, like anytime somebody does a Cars That Go Boom or Supersonic dance, I'm there for it. Like Supersonic by JJ Fad will always slap. I mean, it was so good. Fergie stole beats from it for Fergalicious, so I'm just gonna leave that right there. But I don't know though. And this is the one thing I've tried to do. I don't always succeed, but there are a lot of sort of people our age who get really bitter about like sort of the new music and like new music isn't good music, and it's not good music to me all the time. And when I like a new music thing, it tends to be because it sounds like our music.
yeah, for sure."
But I know, but like if the kids love it, like they need to have their own music. They need to have stuff we don't like. Just the same way we had, like my mom could not stand the Beastie Boys.
Right. That's how I relate to it because I know my dad used to hate the music that my brother and I would listen to. Absolutely hate it, right? And it's like we also grew up with a lot of uncles and aunts that weren't much older than us because my mom's side of the family had like a wide range of ages. So we had a lot of influence from their music, in the 70s and 80s. So we had a lot of that type of music that we liked. But like Luke, he loves all sorts of 80s music. He'd rather listen to 80s music than anything. But that's because he's always hung out with me and that's what I listen to. Right. But my ex-wife and my two daughters are all about the modern stuff. It's like,
it's all of my parents, of course, were young. So there's a lot of like Aerosmith and what else did I remember? Like my mother loved Bruce Springsteen, and at the time Bruce Springsteen was a thing. I did not learn to appreciate Bruce Springsteen until like the last 10 years. And a lot of it has been since her death. Now that it's no longer you like the same music. Same with you too. Like she dragged us when I was in 9th grade to see Rattle and Hum.
Oh my God, Rattle.
Oh my God, I hated Bono for decades. There are people who hate Bono for reasons. I just hated him because my mom loved him.
when I was in high school, I was probably like ninth grade, maybe 10th grade, right? It's when they think they came out with Joshua Tree, and it
Mm.
was like the biggest album thing ever
With
happening,
or
right?
Without You was such a like I had to lie and say I didn't like that song, but it was so good.
I was never a big fan of U2. Even in high school, I didn't like them.
Yeah.
But it's like, you had to give them credit for the reach they had, but it's like I never liked them, but all the other people in my school loved them,
Yeah.
right? But it's like I was also even back then, I was never listening to the music of my generation. I mean, when I was growing up, I listened to more Elvis and 50s music, and
Mhm.
I really just liked, yeah, Dion and the Wanderers and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, right? That was my music. That's just what I just enjoyed it. Even to this day, that's what I enjoy more than anything, and it's like,
Well, it was like for me, I loved Kiss was my first band, Kiss in Kansas. And wait, quick plug. If you go watch the Largo's Lair Infinite playlist episodes I've done, you will hear more in-depth stories about my 70s music love affairs. But Kansas, Dust in the Wind, and Kiss Destroyer, those were like the first two records that
oh,
rocked my
Dust in the Wind
world.
was such a good song.
Such a good song. My parents hated both of those bands.
That's one of my son's favorite songs, actually, is Dust in the Wind.
It's just I can't. It's like, and I think about now like how like for me like sort of existential dread and depression started very early in life for a variety of reasons. But when I go back and look at like my first real favorite song was Dust in the Wind, it's just kind of like, well, maybe you didn't. Maybe if you had started off with Donny Osmond, Puppy Love, like all the other children of that generation did, maybe you would be less depressed. Probably not. I'd probably be more depressed because I'd be like, why am I so shallow and empty headed? And why do I daydream about
the,
giant teeth
the
being
Osmonds
sexy?
were all over everything.
And I gotta say, I watched way too much Donny. I never thought Donny Osmond was attractive.
Yeah.
I was just, what attracted me was how, like, despite um, how patriarchal bent the Mormon religion is, how much sort of feminism 70s Marie Osmond gave, that was really appealing to me as a kid because she was very like she got to sort of, I mean, when I say sexy dresses, again, it's the 70s.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a child's version of, oh, that's a very, but like she got to wear cute outfits and she got to dance and sing, and it kind of felt like she had her own opinions. I've not rewatched any of this as an adult, but as a kid,
Right.
like Marie Osmond was cool. I may or may not be stalking Donnie and Marie Osmond dolls from Mattel on the internet as we speak for my collection at some point.
Yeah, that's the other thing, right? They had a ton of merchandise, which was not a normal thing
It
for
was not.
what they were doing anyway.
Yeah, see, Briscoe has a good point. I don't know anything after 2000. I'm kind of like that. I find
Yeah.
out about after 2000s now a little bit quicker thanks to TikTok.
My daughter all the time is going, "Hey, Dad, have you heard this song? It's the most popular song on the radio or whatever." I'm like,
Yeah, right.
I don't know because I don't even listen to the radio, and if I do, I mean, for the longest time, I drove 5 minutes to work
Mm-hmm.
and 5 minutes home. So it's like that was my radio, and most of it was commercials because that's what's on the
Yeah.
radio most of the time. And it's like I don't put a CD in just so I can drive for 5 minutes. It's just
Yeah. Well, it's, because I stopped mostly driving once I got to Oregon because we have pretty good public transit. I also used to get really bad road rage when I lived in Austin because they were
that's
always
explainable.
redoing the roads.
Yeah.
And it was summer and you can't drive, especially when I worked downtown. I lived in like the Cedar Park, Round Rock area throughout my entire time in that area. Traffic.
I almost died on that road between Fort Hood and Austin, Texas. That main highway, or like it was a kind of a rural road, but it was the main drag to get down to Austin.
The one that goes like through Biggs and everything?
Yeah.
Where did you almost die? And I'll tell you
I don't remember where it was because I never was sober on that ride, but
Gotcha.
there was a little gas station, like convenience store thing off the side of the road on the left-hand side going down. And My buddy had just got his like 78 Chevelle from the
Yeah.
shop that he had redone. And we were doing like 90 down that road, which, we shouldn't have been doing because it was not that kind of road. And we come up over this little knoll, and there was a semi truck parked in the road that was turning in to deliver, Pepsi or whatever to the little convenience store. So we slammed on the brakes. We went out to the field, which there was just a random pasture there, through the barbed wire fence, and the farmer had like a semi tractor trailer parked in the
Oh
middle
my
of the
God.
field, and we slid underneath it, and we actually stopped when the trailer hit the windshield. That's when we actually stopped. So it was quite scary, but it's a story I live to tell, so
Yeah.
it's all
Well,
good.
so on that rural road, right? Rural, there's my southern accent. This is when I was working in Cedar Park at a Blockbuster, and I lived in Coppers Cove at the time. So it was like a pretty hefty commute every night. When I was coming home, it was right before Christmas, 1998. Yeah, it was 1998. And my tire blew on where that sort of cemetery is on that road, that big long cemetery right
Oh yeah, yep.
where that S curve. So my tire blew right as I started that S curve, and it's a very sharp curve if you remember. It threw me off of the road, and I blacked out. When I came to, I was on a different side of the road than I should have been. And all that was wrong with my car is I had bent the rim of my front tire. And I have one little memory I've gotten back from in the middle of that, waking up thinking, oh, I'm dead now. This is how it ends. And then I woke up in the middle of nowhere, well, on that rural road. But like after a certain time, there's nobody out there, right?
Oh yeah.
So I was sitting there like, what do I do? How long do I need to wait before my family comes looking for me to figure out where I am?
And of
And
course, there was
because,
no cell phones back then, so it wasn't.
yeah, there were not. And it was at a time where, because of the job and the way I came and go, my family wouldn't have realized I hadn't been home for a couple of days, probably because
Yeah.
it wasn't really until like the weekend where I'd pop in and visit everyone, even though they lived down the road from me. Just because I was working at Blockbuster, and I'd be there some nights till 1 or 2, and then not get home till like 3 or 4 because I'd stop at a 24-hour Walmart to pick up breakfast and see if they had any new Star Wars figures or whatever. And so like it was like still 30, 40 minutes from anywhere, like by car, much less walking. And I was standing there trying to figure out what the fuck. Apologize for language, people, but I'm in the moment. And this car pulls up in the middle of nowhere with a dude in it, right? In the dark, so I can't really see what he looks like. And it's like car trouble, and I'm sitting there, and it's that moment where it's like, this is how the serial killer stories usually start.
Yep.
And I'm having to figure out, do I want to start walking or do I want to risk it? And then I'm like, well, I've got mace in my bag. I've got the little penknife that my uncle gave me. And I'm pissed because I'm already assessing in my head how much it's going to cost to repair the rim of my car.
Right.
And I was already waiting on my insurance company because a 18-wheeler had shattered my windshield. So I had a spider crack that was now across the windshield because it takes forever for insurance to do anything.
Oh yeah.
So I'm having to assess whether or not to get in the car with this guy. And I'm like, I've got the bear mace. I've got the little penknife. I'm mad. I am not to be trifled with. I'm like, and he's driving. So I'm thinking, worst case scenario, I crash 2 times this night. But he'll get me a little further before he tries to murder me. So I think I'm okay. So I get in the car, and I'm just the whole time sitting there, and he's just like, not helping. He's like, man, this is a terrible place to break down. I often think what would happen to me if I broke down or had a flat out here. He's like, it would be days before anyone realized I was missing. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, yeah, my parents will probably be, and my parents did not live near me. It was my grandparents and my uncle at the time. But I was like, yeah, my parents will start looking for me in like an hour or 2, but I would rather get to a payphone and call them instead of, and we had this really weird conversation that, since he didn't kill me, it just sort of feels like one of those in between things that happen to you when you almost die but don't. Or as my friend, I say this, he was one of the Carls, but he was one of the better Carls. Um, he was like, "You died. You're in a different universe now." Like he's still probably to this day convinced that I died that night and shifted to this universe.
Yeah.
And you know, if he wants to believe that, that's fine. There are times where it feels like, yeah, maybe that's true.
Stranger things have happened.
It's true. So maybe I am dead over there, and that's fine. But over here, I'm good.
I've tried to figure out ways to verify if that's happened to me, and I have yet
Yeah,
to.
and like this event is the only time where it's like there are little things that feel different. People from high school, but it's again when you're old, like people get this rose-colored view of how things were.
Oh yeah.
Like there's this one girl who was really, really fucking mean to me every day for my entire high school existence, who a few years ago found me on Facebook and like, oh my God, we were such good friends. And I don't know if it's just that she's trying to pretend she wasn't evil to me or, you know, different universe, different rules, whatever.
Right.
But she's recounted a few times, like parties we were at that she shouldn't have been, that I don't remember her being at, but she remembers everything that happened there. And, you know, back then we didn't have phones, we didn't have cameras, we didn't
Thank
document, we
God.
didn't talk about what happened at parties.
Nope.
None of the friends that were there with me were friends with her that would have talked to her about anything that, and it's not like most of them would remember. I was the sober friend most nights. Um, so I don't know. Like there are plausible, logical reasons for all of this. But I mean, I came on you and Luke's show and talked about that weird thing that happened at my grandparents' house. This was in the
Yeah.
same part of Texas as well. Like, and you live there. That's a weird place. There's
Oh
like,
yeah.
if there's an in between gateway between universes anywhere, and like that's a place like where that could happen.
Oh,
Like, it's
absolutely.
plausible.
Yeah.
And so I don't discount it because it sounds illogical because we live in an illogical world. I just don't have enough proof to prove that that's what happened. He did not try to murder me though. He did safely get me to a convenience store and drove off into the night. I'm gonna assume legitimately to go home to eat his TV dinner. And so he did offer to like, you know, he's like, I have to go do this. So I could probably get, I was like, no, I don't care how safe you seem. You do not need to know where I live.
Yeah. Right.
He got me to a gas station where the lady is like, we don't have a payphone. I'm like, why don't you have a fucking payphone? I'm like,
Yeah.
well, can I use your phone? And she's like, no. I'm like, well, I need to call somebody to come pick me up. She's like, well, our payphone, we don't have a payphone anymore, and you can't use our phone. And so I went and I got like $30 worth of like soda and chips. And I'm like, I'm gonna buy $30 worth of stuff right now. You're gonna let me use your phone to call my grandmother so she can send my uncle to rescue me.
I used to
And
love
she
places like
looked
that.
at me and
We don't have a phone, and you can't use our actual business phone, even if it's an emergency and you're probably
yeah,
going to die.
right. And she just sort of, but it was also one of those places that had like sit down food for whatever. I'd never realized this place had like a sit down deli area. But I got $30 in like Coke and chips and stuff because I'm like, it's gonna take a while for my family to get in at this time of night, as old as everyone is. And so yeah. And then the next day my uncle went to get a part for his car. And about 3 blocks, you know, like I say blocks, but not real blocks out there, he crashed head on into a school bus and killed himself. So
Holy.
on that road, like right by where I almost died. So anyway, that
Yeah. I
was one
think
of the Carl's things that he was like, it's obviously the universe working in mysterious ways.
it's one of
So
those things that, there are some areas out there that, like you said, are just
yeah.
so odd that you never really can say it isn't possible out there.
Yeah, I hate to like prescribe supernatural events to things, but it's really hard sometimes not to. Let's see. We'll pop up really quick, see what chat is saying. Right. Well, welcome to Canada. Andrew, you would love Donnie and Marie. I'm just saying, at the time. Yeah, if it was a cargo van, I probably would not have, because everyone knows nothing good happens in a white van.
Free candy.
Revisionist history. Yeah, that's what I lean toward, but it's just, again, this girl knows facts. I don't know. Are we in the world of the dead, or are we just in a different world? I watch Carnival of Souls every year, and every year when I watch Carnival of Souls, I'm like, huh, maybe.
I'm a firm believer in the fact that we live in a place where there is multiple realities all simultaneously happening at the same time.
Yeah. Well, time is. Um,
I watched this really cool thing about, you know, the Mandela effect. And
mhm.
this one scientist absolutely believes that when they started the collider over in
Yeah.
Sweden or wherever the hell it is, that it actually caused the our universe to gravitate towards another universe too closely,
Yeah.
and that caused a lot of the rift of these Mandela effects. Now, some of them are just bad,
Yeah.
you know,
Some of them. Yeah. And
like the
I
one that people are like, oh, well, the Darth Vader saying, "No, I am your father," or just Luke, I am your father. That's just people misquoting in so many times and so often
yeah.
on skits and stuff.
Well,
But
it's
then
also
there's other
how.
things like the cornucopia on the Fruit of the Looms. That was
Yeah. That
legit there.
that was there. I remember that. Okay, so I have just because you brought up specifically Star Wars and Mandela for that. Let's see. Of course, it's at the way bottom of my stack, so I can't get my evidence. I am working. Well, I was working on a video, and then Scott Nutwick released a Mandela Effect Star Wars video, and I'm like, never mind. Um, but there, there's this big thing where people swear that they saw the full big scene, right? And there's two reasons for that. And it's not that people are misremembering seeing it, it's that we didn't, the only way we got to rewatch, finger quote, rewatch Star Wars was through the media. So we have the comic books by Marvel, which had that scene in it. And then and you can go and back this one up on eBay right now, anyone who's going to doubt, anyone who might want to do some backup evidence. But if you go and look up the Star Wars storybook from the 70s, every one of us kids had at least one copy of that we read to shreds.
But the other part of that is
It has
that
that whole scene in it.
I believe that at some point in time on some special thing, they showed that full scene.
They didn't. There was a special at one point that showed some of the behind the scenes stuff.
Or maybe
So
that's
they
what it
didn't
was.
show
Yeah.
the full scene, but they showed bits of it. I
Yeah.
can't find what show it is, so I can't. That's one of the reasons I haven't done the video yet, because I don't have that piece of it. But because it was in the coloring book, I mean the comic book, it was in that Star Wars story, and the Star Wars storybook goes into detail. It was in the novelization, which was another way we revisited Star Wars as kids. And then that special showed some clips of it.
Yes, that special showed
So
a lot of
between
clips.
those four things, there's enough there for us to know exactly what was in that scene and then have the memory of seeing it. So it's not a true Mandela effect.
Right.
It's not even really misremembered memories. It's we were all too young to have proper context, and since everything wasn't digitized and on the internet like it is now, it's easier for our memories to sort of rebuild that and shape it a certain way. Um, so that's my theory on the Biggs Mandela effect. It's like those components, and if I can ever find what special that was, then I can probably do the video, and I'll credit properly, unlike Scott Nightlick would. So
Yes.
so,
Always a good
or
thing to
I'll buy
credit.
it so it's my copy, and I'm not stealing somebody else's copy.
Always good to credit the people that are, giving
You
you
should
your
always
stuff.
credit the people, right? And this is why when I buy something from Retro Reprints, uh, one of these retro coloring books, that's why I never remove that watermark from the pages I color, is because I want people to know some of the stuff you can go buy at Retro Reprints, because he is an archivist and he does amazing work. And as somebody who has to create some of these pages from old coloring books and scan them and conserve them, let me tell you, it's time intensive and stupid. So the fact this man is willing to do the work he does and let me buy it, check him out. Anyway, and he's really affordable for what, because again, I know the amount like there are sometimes when I do my own, it can take days to clean a page if somebody's colored on it. So yeah, there are times where I own books and I will still buy it from him because I don't want to have to take the time and effort to clean it up.
There's a lot to be said about that kind of stuff, though.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, I like the work. At some point, I'm going to make a video that has time lapse, of course, but screen captures me cleaning up a page just so people get. Not that I want people to think, oh, look how hard Allison works. She's the best. Just so that people can understand what it takes.
It's kind of how I feel about like dial building, you know, because like I build a lot of my own.
Yeah.
And they're not great, so I would never sell them. But it's like when Random Diorama puts a price on something, you know, people are like, well, that's really expensive. I'm like, you know how much time went into that? Just that little thing you think is nothing. There's a lot of time in that.
It's a lot of time it takes. And it's like, yeah, and it's funny, you know, because like I often find myself, this is not me shilling for like Hasbro or Mattel or anything. I sometimes find myself going, oh my God, $24, $25 on something. And then like without a second thought, dropping like $30 on something from like even Super 7, right?
Yep.
And at this point, I have enough friends who make toys, or I'm friendly with enough people who make toys. Not all of them are my friends. So that'd be parasocial. I'm friendly with people on the internet who have toy lines or whatnot, or do like sell their digital prints or whatever. And it's like, it is pretty spendy. And most of the people doing it aren't making a lot of money doing it. They're doing it because they love it.
Yep.
Mattel and Hasbro sell at the price points they do. And you know, like some of it is so that they can make money, obviously, but just as I've, you know, and like Travis, Mr. Wonderful, your new co-host, just sort of some of the stuff he's talked about with Hexastack and getting all that up. I'm like, okay, maybe I need to, I mean, again, I think Hasbro and Mattel, most of their stuff could drop the prices by several bucks and still make money, just not as much money.
Yeah, Hasbro and Mattel's biggest problem is they're just trying to appease the shareholders, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
That's the thing.
You know, and it's like
an independent dude that's, you know, trying to do it all on his own. There's a lot of time and money involved in that. Yep. So it's like,
yeah, and so anyway, and when people are like, why would you crowdfund? It's like, because it's really expensive, and these factories require you to have money ahead of time.
And if you want to get put into a schedule where you can actually get your stuff out in a, you know, without it taking 4 years, you know, you got to do it.
You gotta. So anyway, that's my little spiel about that. As we digress, and everyone who watches this knows we digress on this show. I will bring it back to, there are a couple of people who do digital render creation things that I've been considering reaching out to, not necessarily because I want to make my own toy line per se, but there are a couple of these like 80s properties, say Krull, that never got figures, that I've been considering reaching out to some of the people who do digital renders to see if maybe they want to collaborate on some stuff, because it would be fun to get like a line of Krull figures or Beastmaster or whatever. And with, for instance, Beastmaster, they wouldn't necessarily need to make a full toy line so much as they could make conversion kits for Motu Origins. So one of my goals for the next year, to reach out and sort of see what I can make happen. Because I would like some Krull figures.
You know, out of all the stuff that Mattel and Hasbro do, and Hasbro being the worst of the lot, that's one of the things that drives me crazy is they have all these awesome properties that they just sit on. Now, granted, are they going to be popular today other than nostalgia bait? Probably not. But it's like, if you released a newly stylized mask series with
Yeah,
modern vehicles and stuff, it would probably go over really well. I
I
know a
think.
lot of young kids that love things like Paw Patrol, and they
Yeah,
grew up with you know things like that, and it's like those things would just sell really well. But
yeah,
what
I
do I
think.
know?
Yeah, I think. Well, there's sort of, in my opinion, this is an opinion. This is not fact. Some of this is from talking, because again, we live in a digital age where you can talk to some of the people who make the toys and work for the companies. And a lot of it's not, like, the Lennys, the Emilys, the equivalent over at Mattel. We don't know. They're not as media savvy, so we don't really know
Yeah.
who's really making decisions at Mattel. I do know there was a couple videos around the Rulers of the Sun stuff released by Mattel that had one of, I don't know if he's still a brand manager, but at the time he was involved with the brand, and it was his idea because he loved Sunman to bring Sunman to the line. But we don't, and like you get an idea like that where it's like, let's bring something new into it as well, and a lot of the fans react negatively. But
Yep.
what about these? It's like you have to bring new stuff in. And to me, like, it makes the most sense for Origins to bring stuff like Sunman, Black Star. I would love if they could somehow bring in Power Lords, Sectars, even all in that scale. Because the reason, in my opinion, a lot of these sort of toy lines didn't sell as well is because they were all out of scale with each other.
Oh, absolutely.
And so,
One of the biggest issues that you had as a kid, luckily I grew up where I started playing with the Fisher Price Adventure people, having Fisher Price
mhm,
in my
yeah,
backyard basically. And my mom, or not my mom, my mom's sister and my dad both working there. I had a lot of those toys. So when Star Wars came out, it was already that scale, so it worked out
yeah.
well for me. And then GI Joe came out, it was even better because then I had three different toy lines all on the same scale.
Well, not only that, a lot of the original 12 Star Wars figures were kit bashed from Adventure people.
Yep.
They just built those sculpts on top of them.
Yeah,
Which
that's where
is
the
why you
prototypes are
ever
done.
wonder, why does Princess Leia have pants um, for that original figure? Why does she look the way she does? Go look at a couple of the Adventure People lady figures. Like there
Yep.
are two or three of them where it's like it looks like they just cut the hair off and made those
Yep.
buns on top of it
I
and gave
laugh
her a
because like
different
so many people
color.
are like, oh well, Kenner came out with the 3 3/4 inch figure. No, they didn't.
Kenner just popularized. Kenner made it the default setting,
Yep.
and I think that's sort of the difference.
Yes.
Like there's that famous story, like where they were like, how are we going to make a ship to fit them? Because Kenner's popular line at the time was $6 million Man
Yep.
and Bionic Woman figures. And it wasn't that they said, oh my God, let's create a new scale. It was that they were like, oh, let's work outside of our normal scale. And that was revolutionary when he came up with it because that was not a scale they had worked in before.
And it was
So,
also a lot to do with the fact that plastic was getting crazy expensive over in China, which
yeah, there was that too.
it was time to let's make these smaller.
Yeah, well, and also there that plays into the other, let's call it fairy tale mythology about these figures used to only cost $2 or
Yeah.
$3 or whatever. It's like, yeah, but if you inflate that, the $2 my parents spent on vintage Star Wars action figures with inflation over time today works out to about $17. So we're paying the same amount for most toys that we would have been paying for them back then with inflation. So it's that mindset that we have to, that I've had
People
to work
really
on.
struggle with that.
They don't, it's funny, people don't struggle with the concept of inflation on a lot of things. Like there are some people when you're like, oh, like beyond like the cost of like the cost of eggs is now this amount, right?
Yeah.
It used to be this, and it was like, but it's not that egg companies are, like trying to rip you off, or it's a big egg is trying to ruin us. It's just this is what it costs now because of the way money changes over time, right? But with action figures and toys, in adult collectors, there's this weird anger that, and I think it ties into the nostalgia we feel around it.
Yeah, I
Because if
would
we
agree with
have
it.
to stop and admit the inflation side of it, we have to really admit how much time has passed.
Ooh.
So and it's like, I'm not going to. This next statement is not to devalue or shit upon anything, any valid criticism people have about the Star Wars sequel trilogy. So don't take it this way. But I will say, I think some of the extreme negativity toward it that isn't based on people who are assholes. This is separate from the asshole quotient because there are just some people who want to hate on everything because it gets clicks. Who don't believe in any of the things they're hating on. It's just this gets me money on YouTube, right?
Yep.
Or TikTok or wherever. But to my personal belief, there is a certain segment of the extreme negative reaction to the sequel trilogy is because the heroes die. Han dies, Leia dies, Luke
Oh,
dies. Spoiler alert,
yeah.
everyone.
There's a big portion of people that hated the the sequels as soon as they showed the highlights that Han got killed, or as soon as it leaked that Han was going to
Yeah,
die,
right.
right? A lot of them don't understand though that that was Harrison Ford saying, "Yes, I want to die in this movie so I can
Yeah,
get
because
done
he
with
wanted
Star
to be
Wars."
killed in Return of the Jedi. Like
Yep.
it was supposed to end. Like originally, that's what he wanted, and George Lucas changed that.
Yep.
But at the same time, like I think that's some of it because we don't like our heroes to die, especially for Gen X. Because we do believe we are unstoppable, unkillable, etc. Our heroes dying is gonna, and it's also at the same time we're losing Prince. We lost David Bowie. We lost Carrie Fisher. For real. Like, I don't fully, in my heart of hearts, and this is of course emotion based. In my heart of hearts, I don't know that if Rise of Skywalker, if she hadn't have died, if she would have died in that movie. I still want to believe that they would have defaulted to the original unused ending of Return of the Jedi, where Leia was elected the president of the galaxy, or whatever it was, the queen of all people,
Yeah. Yeah.
something like that. Because a lot of what they did with the
They
sequel
changed a lot of
trilogy
that
was,
whole story though, going throughout as the new directors came in and
yeah, they had to. But
people
originally,
passed
like,
away and stuff like that. It's like,
I think that was probably where they were going because a lot of what they were doing was sort of the stuff George Lucas didn't do with the characters in the sequels. So, I mean, the original trilogy sequels.
yeah.
So, and I could be wrong, but at the same time, I think a lot of the negative, and you see it even now. Like there are a lot of memes going around with like all of the characters photoshopped together, and like this is what they cheated us of in the sequel, and it's all of them together and happy, and it's like, I'm not going to argue if that's why you don't like them. That's valid. Good, like that's not something I care to argue against. You can definitely, there's some writing issues with those movies. I'm happy to entertain those. I'm happy to entertain
The thing is like
valid criticism.
one of one of the reasons I was a little bummed out with the sequels is that I don't think, for me personally, it
Yeah,
didn't finish that story right. It kind of
it's
gave because Disney wanted to take it and make it so they could keep moving on with the story, right? For
yeah,
me, I was personally hoping that like the sequels would actually end the Skywalker saga with Skywalker, right? Not,
yeah,
and I also, you know, being a big Star Wars fan, I read all the, expanded universe stuff
yeah.
and all the stories that were there. So it was like I had a you know, a predetermined notion of what I wanted to see, and that didn't happen. Did I hate them?
Yeah,
I was not as happy with them as I
right.
was the other movies, but I didn't hate them. But a
I
lot of it has to do with the fact that I wanted to see a certain thing that I didn't get to see.
I think for me, my biggest disappointment is that it sort of it ends the Skywalker story. I mean, Rey adopts the name at the end or whatever.
Yeah,
Spoiler alert, people. But she's not truly a Skywalker.
right.
And for me, and this is because I'm an old school day one. I've seen I saw Star Wars in its first run before it was A New
Yep.
Hope or Episode 4 or any of that. My Star Wars was before there were gonna be sequels.
Right.
And again, I don't care. Like, that's not to say that I'm any more valid as a fan than somebody who went and saw Phantom Menace yesterday with their dad, and now they're all about Star Wars and they want some
Yeah.
Star Wars
But
stories.
people have
Like,
also idolized George Lucas to a point where he could do no wrong, and that's not
and
true at all. There are so many story holes
most
and
of his
plots, and
movies are not very good.
yeah,
George Lucas has not done a lot of good movies. Like, and people are like, but Indiana Jones, I'm like, Steven Spielberg.
yep.
I also believe there's only been one good Indiana Jones movie, and that was Raiders of the Lost Ark. So, I don't like any of the other ones
I
very much.
enjoyed what was the one that he did with Sean Connery?
That one was enjoyable, but it's not
The
one I
Last Crusade.
rewatched. I
Yeah,
watched
I
the
enjoyed that one, but Raiders was the best one. And I mean,
yeah,
there was a whole thing that happened. We went to see Raiders as a kid for my brother's birthday, whatever he turned that year. And I remember it was me, my brother, and my brother's friend. And then my mom took us. This tiny little redneck mall in a town, 30 minutes away or whatever. And I remember my brother got one of those portable games. It was like there were two boxers, but they were the wind up robots, and instead of like
yeah.
their legs moved and then their hands moved, right? And it was like a small version of Rock'em Sock'em Robots. I remember we had that, and then we had an old Chrysler LeBaron K car station wagon, and of course
Oh my god.
we were all sitting in the back because you didn't sit in the seats back then, right?
Yeah, no. There
And
were no seat belts for back required in the back
right,
seat
and
either.
we had when my mom started the car after seeing this movie, me and my brother and his friend are all like, "Oh, that was so awesome," and I was terrified that the guy's face melted off. We were
Oh my
talking about
god, I love
that,
that.
and my mom started the car, and the rear defroster got kicked on because it was March, and
Yeah.
it flamed up and shattered the back windshield
Oh
like
my
all
god.
over us, right? And of course it was the safety glass, so none of us got hurt. But
Yeah,
my
right.
mom was a freak, and she was screaming and worried that all of us were going to die because we got glass on us, and then my dad was a mechanic, and it was going to be her fault that she did something wrong, and come to find out my brother had been screwing around because that was back when you could actually unplug those little things from it.
Yeah.
He had been screwing around and never plugged it in all the way, so that's what caused it. But
Yeah, all the havoc we used to be able to wreck. We went because it was my parents owned a trailer park for a while and would rent them. And this was right as we were taking it over. So it was before my parents had learned boundaries. So we went with tenants. To be fair, when my parents became friends with them, they weren't tenants. So it was before my parents had bought this trailer park. But they were just cool people that lived by us. And we all went. And I remember the girl in the couple was really kick ass. Like, I remember sitting at her house, and she was technically a stay at home wife. They didn't have kids yet. But she was also a feminist, so it's like I would go over there and she'd be making cupcakes from scratch while talking about feminist theory. I was very young, but it was just it. So like the first feminism I learned about as a kid, that isn't sort of just me observing it on TV or whatever, is somebody talking about it as she's making cupcakes from scratch, right?
yeah,
Which like some people would see as a dichotomy, but it just imparted to me. It's like, this is what she wants. This is her life. This is the life she's making. Isn't that cool? Like, I could do that. So, early on, I've always, like, a woman's place isn't in the kitchen unless that's where she wants to be. Like if
yep.
that's her choice, yeah. And as long as she doesn't shit on other people for making that choice.
I think that's what the biggest problem with the current feminism thing is nowadays, is that so many of them want to just take the woman out of that situation totally. And there's some women that want to be in that situation. They don't want to be controlled in that situation, but that's where they want to be. They want to be the homemaker. They want to be, the person that when their husband comes home, serves them dinner or whatever. That's just what they want. But it doesn't mean they want to be controlled in that situation.
Good morning, Breck. Lovely to see you. I'm going to pop in with the
Trickster.
chat really quick. This is why one day I'll be a big enough YouTuber to have somebody here just to do chat for us while we chat. Everyone glad that Brick is here, as we should be. Brick is a maze. Nice. Yeah, there you go. Todd has been enjoying the Turtles of Grace. Yeah, they should definitely do more collabs. I didn't like those at first, but as I've gotten those figures, I really and this happens a lot with Mattel and Motu. The toy photography they use is terrible.
Yeah.
Whoever is painting the figures for those needs to up their game. But then I get them in hand and they look amazing. And then someone like Thanos will take them and do amazing things with them, even in a safe for work stuff. Yeah. Wait, quickly, Briscoe I would also like to see Inhumanoids updated. And this is where I quickly plug Andrew Gady's Toys, a recent Inhumanoids video, pretty good. Andrew does a lot of good stuff if you're into unproduced figures of the 80s and 90s that happen to be ladies. But even not, it's good toy history for you. Okay, so Todd's comment I wanted to come back to. Not sure why people take joy in negativity and negativity's sake, regardless of whether it's misinformation. Exactly. I don't, even when it's not misinformation, there's no reason to take joy in it, and some people do.
I mean, we all have, the thing is that we all have things that we don't like or things that we don't prefer. But I think the biggest thing nowadays is that we have a culture that's been created where everybody thinks that everybody's opinion has to agree with their opinion or it's wrong.
And if you don't align, you're wrong. It's
right,
not that your opinion's wrong, it's that you're wrong. And we're so individualized that we can't accept that our opinion is not the correct one. So I was thinking about this yesterday during the Phantom Menace, not for the obvious reasons, but because of that speech Yoda gives at one point, like hate, fear leads to this, anger, like he gives that whole speech, and I'm like, if that doesn't represent sort of what I've been not having a great time with Star Wars fans in the last few years, it's because it's like the dislike, the anger, the fear, whatever, has just led to a really where it's like sometimes I don't like admitting I still like Star Wars. So anyway, and then quickly right back on that, Briscoe makes this comment. Temple of Doom is my favorite. That's probably my least favorite Indiana Jones movie.
Briscoe, you're wrong. Temple of Doom
But what
sucks.
I'm going to say, right? What I'm going to say, I don't care that that's his favorite from the perspective of it doesn't mean that I'm wrong because it's not my favorite or I don't enjoy it. Yeah. It just means like Briscoe.
Well, I know a lot of people that Empire Strikes Back is their favorite Star Wars movie, right? Yeah. Like that was my brother's favorite Star Wars, and him and I used to go back and forth all the time because I was, I loved A New Hope and I loved Return of the Jedi, right? But I think I love Return of the Jedi because I watched it when I was 10 as opposed to watching it when I was 5, 6, and 7, right? So it was different, perspective for me. Yeah. But now that I'm older, I look at, some of the storytelling that was done during the Empire Strikes Back. And I'm like, yeah, that's valid that it was a better movie as far as the dramatic.
Empire is a better film.
Right.
Than the other two.
Yeah.
Star Wars is the better movie. And I know that some people are like, what? But movies you go to enjoy film is like, to me, again, this is my film nerd. I enjoy a lot of sort of like Friday the 13th is one of my top 5. The original 1980 version, where it's Jason. Spoiler alert: Jason's mom is the killer. If you're
man, now I don't have to watch that movie.
50-year-old movie. Oh well. This is the Gen X in me. Get over it, kid. Stop being a junior boomer. But it's not a good film. It's not, it's excluded from like the top 100 movies of all time. I don't get personally outraged and want to like destroy the American AF, the Film Institute or whatever.
Well, growing up, one of my favorite movies was the Flash Gordon movie with Sam Jones.
That's such a good movie, but it's not a great film.
No, it's a great movie, but yeah.
And it's okay.
You take a scholarly look at it, that movie was trash. But
it's okay to like bad things that are quote unquote bad. Like it's okay. Like there's nothing wrong if you like a terrible movie that's like badly made or badly written or whatever. It doesn't. It's okay. Just if you like it, you like it. You don't have to, and it doesn't have to be a good film for you to like it. It's just a
right.
fun movie. It can be fun. Like I don't know that, and that's for me. Like it took me, and it's not like I've always been this way. I 100% used to be. Oh, if you think Star Wars, all of them, this is in the 90s or whatever. If you think they're terrible, you're a bad person.
Yep.
I mean, you're probably a bad person, but it's not because of the Star Wars thing. It's just you're a bad person, and this is just.
Well, it's like I have an uncle who, he's a diehard Star Trek fan. But that's what he grew up with. Him and my grandfather used to sit down and watch.
Some people just vibe with Star Trek, and Star Trek and Star Wars are such completely different.
Absolutely,
like, they're so different. Like I'm not a huge. I will say, this is again a plug. It's not like on purpose, but it just because of the convo. Like Kayla and Johnny, their like Trek retrek show is the first time I've been able to find a way to appreciate the old Star Trek, and it's 100% because Kayla's watching it for the first time. We're getting, we're getting the observation. I say kid. Kayla is an adult woman, but because of her age, and at my age, she's a kid to me, right?
Yep.
Everyone to me is a kid until they're 40 now. Welcome to old age.
She does reference herself as my internet daughter, so I mean,
she does. So
I feel
like it's okay for us to refer to her as a kid.
Yep.
Not to infant, just in relation to our ages, but I've grown to appreciate Star Trek, seeing it through her eyes and through Johnny, who is a big Star Trek fan, and sort of getting to hear them talk about it. And so I've been watching those and enjoying them, not necessarily because suddenly they're good or they're better, but because now I get to go hang out every Thursday or so with Kayla and Johnny's, like premiere of that episode and hear what they thought about it. And I'm usually wrapping up work, so I don't get to chat as much. But when I get to sort of chat and talk about the episode, it's really cool. Like there's a community thing happening there. And for me, that's sort of bigger than whether or not I actually like Star Trek. It's that I get to have conversations with cool people about cool things and like.
Well, that's kind of like Motu. We get talking about Motu on the Clubhouse a lot. Yeah. I had one Motu figure as a kid. I never really actually enjoyed the cartoon as a kid. So like, hearing about the new cartoons, I didn't really enjoy the new cartoon either. And it's not because of all the reasons that everybody has now. It's just because I didn't enjoy the story to begin with. So there's nothing to it now for me to really grab onto.
Yeah, it's not as nostalgia based for you. So
right. But like being in conversation with Thanos and Bud and Oz and all you guys on there that talk about Motu because it's important to you from your childhood, it makes me enjoy it more than I ever did as a before this time, right? It's like I also understand some of the lore and things that I didn't really pick up on as a younger person.
Good point, Todd. Big China and Little China. I'm always feel bad for John Carpenter because when he tried to get beyond just doing horror, he did some really great stuff, and it never hit as big. But it always felt like it should have. Like Starman was really good.
Oh, I like Starman too. Yeah,
it's a great movie. Karen Allen, Marion Raven, another one of my childhood heroes. Like my feminism is the lady making cupcakes, Princess Leia, and Marion Ravenwood. So like Wonder Woman and like She-Ra, Tila, Evelyn, even like those were my female role model, and Charlie's Angels because we can jiggle, flip our hair, go out on a date, and it's always they always dated a Carl though.
I had such a childhood crush on Farrah Fawcett. It wasn't even funny.
If not for Star Wars, Charlie's Angels would have been probably like my big because I had those Hasbro dolls.
I owned as a kid. As a kid, I owned like 3 Farrah Fawcett T-shirts, right? And it just had, it was Farrah Fawcett as, Charlie's Angels. Yeah. And I remember one year I went to summer camp and somebody stole my Farrah Fawcett shirt, which was my favorite one. And I was actually like, legit heartbroken over that whole situation.
Yeah, especially at that age. Like your shirt is your, like could have been anything. Like I had a favorite. It's a little bit after this, but in the summer of 1984, my uncle, who was a dropout, wouldn't have been class of '84 anyway. He would have been like class of '78. But he had this T-shirt that said class of 1984, right? And of course, I don't know, like I was like 10, and I stole it because it was, like adult size, but for me it was like a dress. So I literally all summer wore that as a dress with I had a belt for it. I would go everywhere, and just a T-shirt. I mean, I had underpants on, of course. I wasn't a complete heathen. But I would just put this shirt. My grandma would be like, you need to wear more than that T-shirt. So I put on like some little short shorts, which at 10 is not the same as if I were older.
Yeah.
But I would just wear that whole summer. It probably stank at the end of it, but I just loved it. Was like an iron-on, and it was like glitter, rainbow, like it was rainbow cloud, and oh my God. Yeah. I should see if I can find a shirt like it now.
My sister did the same thing to me because my sister's 5 years younger than me, and I had a shirt, and I want to say it probably had Daisy Duke on it. I think is what it had on there.
Probably.
And for me, because I was a bigger kid, it was much bigger for her, and she was probably like 5 or 6, maybe 7.
Yeah.
And she stole that shirt and wore it all the time, and I was so upset with the fact that my mom was like, "She likes that shirt, you let her wear it." I'm like, "But it's my shirt."
Yeah, my uncle was even then a raging drunk, and I take that back. He's not. He doesn't know he's a raging drunk, so he just drinks too much. I want to make sure I properly identify how he identifies.
That's my brother.
He drinks too much.
He's not an alcoholic because he doesn't know he's an alcoholic. He just drinks a lot.
Yeah, and when he goes to jail for drunk driving and stuff, he dries up. And he's fine, so obviously he's not a real alcoholic because he wouldn't be able to stay sober in jail, right?
Right.
And nobody calls it. Well, he's called him on it, but it's not like has any way to make repercussions for him not. It's me telling all of my uncle's business today after I stole his shirt from him and his Dreamboat Annie record. Anyway, it was a good album though. Like if you're gonna steal a record and a shirt from your uncle. Dreamboat Annie, and then that class of '84 shit. But I digress. Anyway, so when you lose your favorite shirt as a kid, it's a deal. So if we find out who stole your Farrah Fawcett shirt, let's ride. Like we'll just go to their house.
If I ever figured that out, I would have taken the kid out because I hunted him down when I was at summer camp. I was one of those angry kids.
This makes me want to put it on TikTok because I feel like the kids on TikTok would find who took your shirt and then we could cancel them.
Right.
Like that is the one thing I will say. It's probably horrible that I enjoy watching it, but whenever somebody does something racist in public, like, and I mean, like somebody calls somebody like a slur or like does something terrible to them and it gets caught on film and then all of TikTok rises up to find out who they are and try to ruin their life. Yeah. Like I shouldn't feel as good about that as I do, but I kind of do because if you're going to call somebody the N-word or worse in public if you don't have that common decency, if the kids of TikTok come after you, I'm just going to sit back and watch you burn.
I have like a love-hate relationship with cancel culture because it's like
I do as well.
I get like in today's world, if you do something that is like you were just describing, you deserve to be canceled. But you can't go back 10 years and expect someone that was doing stuff in that time that was appropriate to be held accountable for that because it was appropriate back then.
But we can't also cancel everyone for all time. And
right.
For certain things. I mean, like there are some things like if you murder somebody, we should cancel you for the rest of your life, O.J. Simpson.
Exactly.
Although, to be fair, we all know, again, I give this warning. I've given it this warning every time since O.J. has died. If you're going to Camp Crystal Lake this summer, don't drink, don't do drugs, don't have premarital sex because O.J. Simpson will rise up from the lake with a machete. So I'm just saying, you've been warned. Anyway.
Camp Crystal Lake, there is a Boy Scout camp that's close to where I live. Who we used to go. We used to go camping there.
Yeah.
Um, and the lake is actually called Crystal Lake. And
Ooh. And that's a part of the country where they filmed that and where it was set as well.
so we had no idea that it wasn't the same Crystal Lake, right? As
Right?
kids. So when we saw that, we were all like so terrified to go to summer camp that year because
Yeah.
Jason was going to come out of that water and get us. Luckily, he never did, but
Luckily. But now that OJ is as dead gets when you're a monstrous murderer,
yes.
be careful at Crystal Lake, kids, because Jason's old and has retired, but OJ is new and fresh. Anyway. Yeah, so for that, canceled. But if somebody did something 10 years ago, I don't feel like, and if somebody does something today and they get canceled, I don't think it's fair 10 years from now to still hold it against them if they show signs that they've tried to be better.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
You know,
if
like,
people grow from a situation, they deserve a second chance. Like, I'm not going to go into details, but recently there was some stuff that happened. Somebody did a thing people didn't like. They reached out to me, made an apology.
and
It
it's
seemed like
also,
it was a valid apology and they
yeah,
meant it, so I accepted it, and they're getting a second chance. If they do something
exactly.
again, that might be different, but at the
Right,
same time,
right.
like, you got to give people actual chance to change.
And some people truly and honestly just don't know any better because they just don't have
They don't.
the exposure to
Yeah.
what's going on or realize that the stuff that we grew up with that was totally acceptable to say, is not acceptable to say anymore.
And if you
There's
just
a lot of
grow,
things that were that's acceptable
yeah,
for us to
right.
say, even as kids. That's not
Yeah.
acceptable to say as an adult nowadays.
And if you grow up in certain areas, you don't necessarily realize it the same way because you don't have exposure to certain types of people. So you
Right.
have to like take a look at the full picture. And I don't know. I mean, there are politicians I would never give a second chance because they're just foul, grotesque
Well,
people.
most politicians are
Most
foul, grotesque
politicians
people.
are, but
Let's
for
be honest.
people, most people just want to do their best. And I try to give everyone a second chance. So yeah, cancel culture is good, but don't overdo it,
Yeah.
basically. And make sure it's a real thing to cancel somebody over. I mean,
Yeah, it goes back to that Mark Twain thing, right? Like there were some comedians that they were trying to cancel during that big uproar for things that they
yeah,
said during the comedy bets, and it's like, yeah, but that was acceptable back then. Not that it
yeah,
was
it
right,
was 10 years
but it
ago.
was acceptable. Being acceptable and being, right are two different things.
Yeah, and it's like also, are they doing it today? So if somebody did something
Right.
10 years ago, but they're not doing it today, it means they now know not to do it.
I
Maybe
mean,
they didn't then.
in society, in the whole entire world, owning, a slave was absolutely acceptable. Was it right? Not in any
No.
stretch of the word, but it was acceptable in society to do so.
Yeah, so you can't, and we certainly can't cancel somebody today because of what their family did.
Right.
If unless they're like, it was okay, my
Right.
family owns
Yeah.
them.
If they haven't learned from it or grown from
Yeah,
that,
right. If
then
they think it
sure.
was okay, then yeah, cancel. Go for it, kids. Do it. Do your worst for those people, but we can't get mad at somebody whose family before they were even 100 years ago did bad stuff if they're not a bad person themselves. So, and if they're like, yeah, it's not cool that my family did that. So I don't know, it just seems like there's not a lot of.
Well, it's like I said about my daughter, right? If somebody puts it on TikTok, a lot of these people don't do their own research. It's just, oh,
Yeah,
I saw it on TikTok, so it's true, it's valid, it's
well,
real.
it's so immediate though, so it's
Yep.
like sometimes it's a valid feeling, it doesn't mean it's valid to burn
Yeah.
everyone down for it.
Yeah. We often
So,
forget to, you know, do a little self-diagnosis and check our emotions before we just react to them. And
yeah, it's also really easy to like step in something not realizing the full scope
yes.
of it, right?
Yep.
So it's like there are phrases that we say. Like I'm going to say this right. My grandfather was half Native American. That does not make me Elizabeth Warren because we didn't grow up in it, so we have no connection to that part of his heritage. So we're not Native I mean, like if he did the 23andMe test or whatever, it would
Right.
probably pop up. But we did not grow up. He rejected that part of his life because he did not have an easy time growing up in the 30s on a reservation halfway. For
Yep.
obvious reasons. He was distrusted for obvious, understandable. Did it make my grandfather pleasant? Does it mean it was right that people didn't trust him? He was a kid, probably not, but I get it.
Well, that's the other thing about that, right? Is that sometimes, like back then, the hatred, deserved or not, went both ways, you know? Like,
Yeah, it did. So, like, and he was on a reservation. Like, this is the one place where I can't even say marginally safe now that stuff has come out. But at the same time, like, I get it. Which is a long way of saying, I recently used to often say powwow. Like, let's powwow about this.
oh yeah, yep.
I don't say that anymore because I now understand sort of.
Well, it's what we grew up with, right? Like I remember when my kids started school and they're like, the teacher, they come home and they're like, can we sit crisscross applesauce, Dad? And I'm like, I don't know what that is, right? And
Yeah,
then they
right.
showed me, right? And I was like, oh, you mean Indian style? They're like,
Yeah,
no, you can't say that. I'm like, oh, right. But that's
yeah,
what we
right.
called it
So,
growing up.
but there's a lot of words like powwow, like that is something that's just always been there for us, and we didn't. I didn't until recently get it.
Yep.
So it's taken me a while to let go of it and work it out. So like I'm pretty good at that stuff, but sometimes you just slip. So like you can't.
Well, yeah, like I say the word, the word retard constantly, and I don't
Yeah,
even mean to. I don't even know I'm doing it. And it's not like I'm
it's
trying to be disrespectful because I
mean,
have a
right?
daughter that has, learning disabilities, but
Yeah,
it's like so ingrained that's, back when I
it's
was a
hard to.
kid,
Yeah,
that's what we called each other as a term of endearment most of the time.
yeah, right. It's something you broke. You have to break yourself of, and
Yep.
sometimes we have those impulses, and it just happens.
Yep.
And again, this is sort of where you have to learn. If you know critical thinking, it's
Yeah.
easier to take a step back and be like, what? And you have to
Yep.
think about the long term harm. And again, this is why you need. This is where I do wish. This is why I edit a lot of my stuff. This is why live streams are so dangerous for me. Um, because something, but it's a lot easier when you go back and watch something to be like, oh wait, we don't. Yeah, that needs to go.
Yeah.
And I need to remember that that's not a thing we say. And I don't think everyone on TikTok, I think they're just pushing sometimes to get it out so fast that they don't stop to like think.
Yep.
Then they
Yeah.
get the feedback. We don't say that anymore, and
Yep.
they don't back down. They dig in. I can say that if I want to, and
Well, that's where
then
a
you
lot
get
of people run
canceled.
into
And
problems is they double down on the stupid
yeah,
thing they said because they don't want to be wrong. It's like,
you just like apologize. Like,
yep.
sorry I said that. Won't do it again. I'm working on it, and then move on. And usually people will let you go. So it's when all of a sudden you do that. Well, in my day, we were allowed. Nobody cares.
Yep.
Like,
Your day was
nobody
wrong.
cares. Apologize and don't do it again. Say you're sorry. You won't do it again. You're working on it. Move along. Like, I don't know. It's just so strange to me that, and I can't say I wouldn't do that. I can't say I wouldn't, but really quick. Exactly. Agreed. That was sort of
Yeah.
our meandering point. Thank you, Alex, for helping us get to a point. We're old. I would love for them to tackle all of it, especially the Filmation Star Trek cartoon. So I'm really hoping for that one.
I recently watched the old Planet of the Apes cartoon, which was totally a badass cartoon.
Brisk, it was not. It was just that my uncle, it's not like I care. If people want to figure out who he is in the world, one, good luck. He has zero digital. My uncle was very much like Matthew McConaughey in Dazed and Confused. So Class of '84 brought a certain caliber of women to his door.
Oh.
Not that any of them wanted him, because he's, again, I hope he doesn't find this and watch this, but he's not attractive. So. And he's, he's been a functioning finger quote alcoholic for like, I don't know. He started drinking at like 6 or 7, so like almost 70 years now. That does damage to you. So I picture all the red veins and liver spots and stuff that come with that much drinking all over, burst blood vessels in your face and stuff. So.
I remember
And
being a kid
some of
and
that was present in the 80s. So
I remember being a kid and going to one of my family, like we were going to a family reunion. So we were staying with like some cousins of my mom's that I had never met before, and it was like, oh, okay, this is cool. They had like, it was like free range, right? It was like you go outside and you just do whatever you want. Like their
yeah,
daughter was like 2 years older than me when I was like 8 and she was smoking cigarettes and stuff, right? But it's like, I remember we got up in the morning and my mom's cousin that we were staying with, it was like, you guys want breakfast, and of course we're like, yeah, let's have breakfast, waffles or whatever the hell it was that she was making, probably eggs and bacon because that's what everybody ate back then.
yeah.
And my mom's cousin's husband gets up and the first thing he does is have like a Bloody Mary, like full on Bloody Mary. I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
interesting.
Right? Hair of the dog that bit you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
my
how you,
parents, not that they didn't drink, but like they drank, when they went to bowling on Saturday night,
yeah.
or if we were at a family picnic, my dad would have a couple of beers, and it wasn't like a really prevalent thing.
Yeah, it was like my family drank like my parents, let me rephrase that, like, like they would throw a party and then they would drink, or, like it's the South, Louisiana, we had a lot of crawfish boil. So they would be drinking at
Oh yeah.
that, or, like we'd go to go get Tex-Mex and they get margaritas with their dinner or whatever. If we went out to eat, they would often have like an alcoholic drink with their meal.
Yeah.
But it was very normal. Like it wasn't.
But it was also like one, right? It was like one, maybe two, depending on how long the dinner
Yeah,
was.
some nights you end up there. It depends on if friends were with, their
Yeah,
friends were with them,
absolutely.
and
Yep.
sometimes it would go a little bit longer because one more become one more.
Yep.
But for the most part, it was just like one or two. You eat your dinner. We live far enough out of town. It was an event. You got up in the morning, you drove to town, you did the shopping. Then before groceries, you went and ate because otherwise, if mom shops on an empty stomach,
Oh yes. Don't be
and
shopping on
since
an
my
empty
mother
stomach.
was mostly a functioning anorexic bulimic, like her idea of a full stomach was not healthy for most people. Like, oh my god, I have 4 chips and some salsa. I'm so full. You animals, picture with my my eating disorder makes sense now because I had a mom who was constantly starving herself, and I love food, so it's like, oh, you're not gonna finish that, mom? I'll eat it for you. Oh my god, you're gonna get fat. And I did, but you know what? I was happy and I ate. So, oh, mom. Anyway, if you are there, mom, in the nether regions, this is your chance to give me a sign to prove. I'm gonna stop slandering you on the. Well, it's not even slander. I'll stop talking about you on the internet.
I
That's
remember
what we.
my mother being the narcissistic sociopath that she is. When I
Oh, I'm
gained a lot of
sorry.
when I gained a lot of weight, she's like, I can't believe how fat you are, and all this other stuff that she used to say with her pleasant tones of guilt
Yeah.
trip and all that. And I'm thinking to myself the entire time, you taught me how to eat. It wasn't like we had healthy snacks or
Right.
and I was never a vegetable person, so I never had to eat my vegetables unless my father forced me to sit at the table to eat my
Right.
vegetables. And it was like, you taught me how to eat. So what do you think is going to happen to me?
Well, that was so. Yeah, it was very like because I did like I loved Brussels. I loved all the vegetable except eggplant. I still hate eggplant to this day.
That's explain. I'm just
Eggplant is the worst. I don't care what you can do with
understandable.
it, how good you can make it. It's terrible. I've never had good eggplant. It does not exist. But otherwise, I ate it. But it was also like, well, there are starving children in China that would love to
Uh
have
huh.
their meal. So my mom would do that. And they reached this point where, like, puberty was not my favorite time of life. Puberty doesn't, sometimes the boob fairy only shows up half-assed. And it can be very hard when the boob fairy shows up and you get some half-assedness out of it.
Or she
Especially
shows up too early or too late for you,
shows up too
poor
early, too
girls.
late, whatever.
Yeah.
The boob fairy she's got a cruel sense of humor. Anyway, So puberty was not my favorite time of life. But I remember at that point looking through like old school photos and my mom going, "Oh my God, like here you are in fourth grade. You were so skinny then." And then we'd move to the
Mm-hmm.
next picture. Look, here's where you started putting all of your weight. That was what I would get. Like, or sometimes, aren't you concerned how fat you're gonna get? How are you ever gonna be in a relationship that fat?
Yeah, no one's gonna love you if you're fat.
Yeah. And my grandmother was overweight. So I would go there and spend summers, and grandma would be like, I'd be up at like 10 o'clock drawing, or when I was older, I'd be drawing or playing with action figures, and I'd be watching like terrible 80s exploitation on USA up all night or horror movies. And my grandma would get up and she'd be like, "Hey, get dressed. We're going to 7-Eleven." And we would go and she'd drop like 30 and like 1980 money, $30 at 7-Eleven, buying like frozen sandwiches and ice cream. And we'd go home and we'd have a feast. So, yeah, lots of eating disorders in my family that helped. So, let's see what's happening in chat. Do-do-do-do. Oh, they're talking about Star Trek, which is great. Nice. So anyway, yeah, so that's that. Anyway, thanks, Mom. I mean, she did her best. Again, my mom was like 15 when she started having babies, so she was a baby herself, so there's only so much I can expect of her.
I tell people that a lot, that no matter how great your parents are and no matter how good a job they do,
Yeah.
no matter what, your parents will always leave you with some kind of childhood trauma. Not even
Yes.
intentionally. It's just a fact of life
Yeah.
because as a kid, you're expecting certain things and you're not going to get it, or you're going to get too much of it, or you're not going to get it the right way or whatever. And it's not your parents that are causing the trauma. It's the way you're reacting to whatever it is they're doing
Yeah.
that's going to cause the
Well, your
trauma.
parents, most parents come from two places, two sort of mind. There's one or the other mindset usually. Either they're going to be as good of a parent as their parents were to them,
Mm-hmm.
or they want to be a better parent than their parent was to them. So you either get the same mismanagement that they got from their parents, or you
Yep.
get the overcompensation that they're so. Yeah, and I don't think there's any. I don't think. Yeah, again, like I didn't. Did I have a perfect, amazing childhood? No, but I don't feel like most of my childhood trauma is because of my parents. So, you know, and they're obvious, like the eating disorder stuff. Obviously, that was part. That's not great. But again, my mom had an eating disorder, so how can I expect my mom to like have not passed that on in some capacity? Because she had one that she didn't know that she, like it was the
Yeah.
70s. Like women are doing drugs, like drugs in the 70s to stay skinny all the time. Like,
Yep.
she was just reacting to the world that she lived in. And, you can't. I'm old enough now that I'm like, it doesn't get me anywhere to sort of blame her for that stuff like I used to.
Well, the thing is it's like I said, it's your body that's creating the trauma and it's your body that has to,
Yeah.
fix it or, adjust to it or
Yeah.
learn how to deal with it. You can't blame your life on your parents, no matter how shitty they are.
Exactly. So let's see. How are you doing on your page, Ed?
I'm doing good.
I'm going to put you in solo so everyone can see what it's looking like on your side. Oh wow, that looks really good, Ed. Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Been a
no, I'm
while
liking
since I
it.
colored anything for real.
Yeah, it takes a little while to get back on the into the vibe of it, but yeah, definitely. Yeah, USA Up All Night was fun. I preferred Rhonda to Gilbert Gottfried. So I also didn't like Gilbert Gottfried's screamy thing that he did. Like,
Yeah, that
that was not
squeaky
his
voice
real
that he always
voice.
had was too much.
Yeah, it was weird the first time I saw him. Realized because we watched Saturday Night Live in my house my entire life, but it was interesting much later in life when I went back and watched that first season in 1980 where he was one of the cast members, and he doesn't use that voice at all in that.
Yep.
And it was really odd, like, to see him like talking normal. And there's some people who don't realize. Same with Bobcat Goldthwait. There are some people who never realized.
Yeah, I watched an interview when Bobcat Goldthwait did that. He made a movie based on it's called, I can't remember the name of it's called, but it's about Bigfoot in
Yeah,
the because he's a big
yeah,
crypto fan and cryptozoological fan, and he was doing an interview and he was talking normal, and it's like we grew up with him the way he talked in
yeah,
Police Academy. It was like, wow, he
yeah.
doesn't actually talk that way.
Well, and it's interesting because like he won't. He doesn't do that anymore at all. Like he really only wants to direct now. Like he
Yeah,
doesn't. But I'm going to assume he, was smart with his money because we're certainly not getting everyone else. You can tell who was not smart with their money during the pandemic by all the people who are suddenly doing all those sequels they never said they would do before.
yep,
It's like, oh, we're going to get more of this. Like suddenly Reese Witherspoon is like, yeah, we'll do another Legally Blonde for you guys.
yep.
It's like, I don't know that we actually need another Legally Blonde Reese Witherspoon.
Well, it's also you can tell the the bands from the 70s and 80s that were not smart with their money and did a lot of drugs with it and stuff because
Yeah.
they're still touring at 95 wearing leather pants. It's like
And they're
you
still
guys just need to
arguing
stop.
over, yeah, they're still arguing over all the old stuff.
Yep.
It's like, come on, guys. Somebody sent me. Can't remember if I sent it to you or not on Instagram, but somebody sent me a Motley Crue clip of Vince Neil coming out and singing, and it was like
Oh
you could
God.
actually hear him finger quote singing, and it was like, I think I did send that, or you sent it to me somehow.
Yeah, maybe I saw that though. That was horrible.
It was so bad.
I
Just
just
like,
sent Lawrence a picture this morning of it's a side by side shot of Axl Rose currently and Benny Hill.
yeah,
They look identical.
yeah, it's just funny. Yeah, and to think, and I don't obviously like nothing wrong with Axl Rose necessarily gaining weight, but I just remember sort of Axl Rose was one of those guys who always seemed like he was really mean to like women who weren't a certain size and didn't look a certain way, and
Yep.
there's something a little satisfactory to me. There's again, like we all have those bullies in high school. There was one, she was really, really mean to me about my weight. She's bigger than I've ever been in my entire life.
Oh yeah.
I definitely don't go onto her Facebook and remind her of that. But it just every so often, whenever I'm feeling shitty and it's sort of remembering all that stuff, I will go look at her Facebook and see what she looks like now. And I don't like, aha, she's fat, she's this. I look at her and I'm like, this is why she was mean to me, because on some level she was afraid of this. And now look what has happened.
Yeah, I remember there was a kid that used to pick on me when I was in school because when I was younger, my dad made me and my brother, not that my dad was ever in the military, but we had to have, military haircuts. It was just,
Yeah.
that's the way it was. You had short hair and,
Yep. Boys have short hair, girls
that's
have
the appropriate
long
way to do it, right? And I remember this kid used to pick on me all the time about it. And then, I was 35 or 40. I saw him and he was bald and, I was like, yep, look at the head of hair I got, motherfucker.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the people that sort of pick on you when they're doing it out of insecurity rather than
Oh yeah, for sure.
actual, it's just, it's good to see. I mean, again, it's not, if she's unhealthy, then I feel, like I hope she does well, but I don't care, like, about that, I don't, it's just, but I go and I look at it because it's like, I think of all the times I felt like crap and then shame ate because, that's how it worked for me. Like if I felt bad, I would deal with it by eating.
Yep.
Oh my God, everyone's calling me fat. So I'm going to eat more because that's a trauma. It doesn't make sense at the time, but trauma responses are trauma responses, whether they are rational to you. Like it's rational and logical, but it doesn't mean it feels rational and logical. But so everyone who didn't realize we will be getting into therapy stuff today, surprise. This is kind of, I sort of expected this because, this is some of what you do on the internet, Ed, is talk about stuff like this.
Yeah. So.
So I was
I
aware.
come from a very dark spot, so I
Yeah.
try to make sure people all
But you guys,
understand that there's there's light at the other side of the tunnel. You just got to get there.
yeah. And I say you guys because it was you and Largo and I think Payne and who else? Can't remember, but there were a few of you who right before the holidays or around the holidays did a live stream where you just sort of got together to talk about men's mental health.
Yeah, Largo has some depressive issues, that
Mm-hmm.
he fights with, and it gets really bad around the holidays. So
Yeah,
he wanted to do a stream on how to help combat that if for anybody else that was suffering from it. And
yeah,
he asked me to come on and, talk about it and stuff, because I've, spoken to him offline about things that, I won't discuss here, but,
yeah, for sure.
you know, and then last year, I was doing that like for the month of May, which was mental health month for men, which is,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of did a whole series on it once a week with one of my other friends, just some things, and it's not really just men's mental health. I mean, it's mental health in general. Everybody suffers from it. It's like,
For sure. And for all of us, it's, there's a really big stigma for different, different reasons. Carrie Fisher, my idol, obviously did a lot of, it feels weird to call it activism because it was kind of just like getting out there and being like, here's my story, but it's activism.
oh yeah,
What she
yep.
it just doesn't necessarily feel like that because it was so authentic to her lived experience that it was just Carrie Fisher talking about her life, which sometimes is the most effective form of activism, is just sort of the real story.
Well, I think a
And
lot of
then
people, like for her, it was good because a lot of people, it was kind of, she started that before a lot of the celebrities and stuff were talking about all of
she
them
did
actually
like
having
who,
problems. A lot of them just, you put them on this pedestal and it's like, well, they have the same type of lives as we do, right? They have
yeah,
same type of problems. They have, parents that are idiots or, get
right.
molested as children or whatever the case may be,
Mhm.
it's,
It was just, like that was a big part of her work, but
my biggest thing is I think so many of us are just afraid to talk about it because we think we're the only ones. And that's where I try to get people to understand that there's a ton of other people that have gone through exactly what you're feeling right now.
well, and not, I think there's that because we are sort of taught to be ashamed of it,
Yep.
especially in our capitalist society, where it's like you're only useful if you can produce money making things. Mental health obviously gets, like when you get one of those depressive benders where you can't get out of bed for 3 days, you're definitely not contributing to a billionaire's pocketbook.
Right. Exactly.
So I think that's, some of the societal thing, but it's just the way people get shamed for it. Like it makes it hard. And when you're depressive, it's really hard to realize other people go through it too because it is so isolating that no matter. I mean, I remember during one of my worst bouts of it reading, this is the PSA for this, kids. This is not the best reading material. I read The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, who obviously dealt with some severe depressive issues, right? It's like when I used to listen to the Carpenters during like binge eating. Like that was not probably the best music to listen to.
Yeah, probably
Um,
not.
but I read The Bell Jar during it. But I was so depressed that I literally at one point was like, Sylvia Plath, she doesn't really get it. And it's like, and then of course this cracks me up once I realized and that was like, oh wait, I'm really depressed when I'm sitting here trying to like pretend Sylvia Plath doesn't suffer like I suffer. So
We do a lot of that to ourselves. So it's kind of funny because, like, you go through a breakup. What's the first thing you do is turn to sad breakup songs. It's
yeah,
like,
right.
let me sit here and loathe my misery for a
Yeah,
while.
I was just super depressed and like
Yeah.
I'm gonna let me read some of these books that have been sitting here that I wanted to reread or I haven't read but I've owned for years, and it was time for a reread of The Bell Jar, and there I am, not feeling better, accomplishing stuff, and demeaning Sylvia Plath and her suffering. Like she just doesn't get it. She's not that depressed. Not anymore. She's not, girl. Stop being a depression Karen. Like I'm the only one who counts here, but that's how it works. So it's like really hard And the
Yeah,
worst of
that's
it, to
that's a big
stop
thing,
and
right?
breathe.
Is you end up self-isolating because you don't feel like talking to people and you don't want to have to
Mhm.
explain yourself. And then to boot, you don't want to have to burden somebody that's your friend or somebody that's a close person to you with all your problems. So it's like
Yeah.
it's a double-edged sword. And
And then
you,
sometimes, and I will say this, and this is not shady because I'm not saying their names, but sometimes you also surround yourself with people who feed into it, by
uh-huh.
who aren't compassionate. So when you do actually reach out, it's sort of the
Yeah. Or you get
self-destructive
people like my
methods.
mother who, when you get divorced and you go live with them because you have nowhere else to go and it's the end of your life because you
Yeah.
feel it's at the end of your life. Her answer is, well, why can't you just be happy? I'm here. Well,
Ugh,
thanks, Ma.
thanks, mom.
Love you.
Yeah, it's true. Oh, see, Alex is here with us. Oh, sorry, Alex. Yeah. We've now reached the therapy portion of our program. I don't mind, honestly. This happens a lot. And that's fine. I try to hit all of the. This is the Allison verse. Mental health, staff, vaguely slanderous things about people. And all of my talk about not being negative, I still am always going to slander Moby.
Well,
That's not slander
they
if
are
it's true,
trash.
though, right?
That's right.
Like, again, and if you ever wonder why Allison dislikes Moby, just Google Natalie Portman and Moby, and it explains it all. Because I am still to this day ride or die for Amidala. That's what was funny about watching The Phantom Menace yesterday, was how young she is in that, and like not. It's not like I haven't rewatched The Phantom Menace before since 19. But I think it's the first. I went and saw it in 3D like in the mid 2000s. But even that's like almost 20 years ago too. Like
I remember when I found out that Keira Knightley was
the yeah
the double
the
or
decoy
doppelganger. Yeah,
queen.
the decoy. And I was just like blown away. I was like,
Yeah,
I would have never put those two as looking similar, but now that you did
they
that,
kind of
yes.
once it's pointed out, then you're like, oh yeah, they kind of do.
Uh-huh.
Um, Especially when they were younger, because they were both like 13, 14 when that movie was made. But it was really weird because like she's so young in it, but it just never seemed like it back then. Because also, I was younger and we were all younger back then, so of course she seems younger. But it was just weird looking at how young Ewan McGregor was in that.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was
He
definitely a
was a
lot younger.
baby, and I
Yeah,
mean, like I had a terrific crush on him back then. But he's just so young in that, and so young that looking at him, I'm like, I feel kind of weird, like remembering how much I love. But I'm like, I was his age, like, I think he's a little bit older than I am. And it's like we were comparable ages back when I was lusting after him. It's fine. It just feels weird now. Like I don't have like MILF or Gram the GILF, the grandma version of that. I don't have like cougar aspirations.
it's funny when you go back and watch some of these old movies though, because it's
Yeah.
like I remember there was some, like girls on like Growing Pains and things like that, right? And it's like
Yeah.
watching it, I never realized how old some of those actresses were, and
Yeah.
it's like wow, they were like 10 years older than me. It's like
Yeah.
I never stood a chance at all.
Well, that's what was funny about like Beverly Hills 90210, like, and everyone's like, "Oh my god." But it was just like back then, if you wanted to do a show like that, you needed to hire, 20 and 30-year-olds who looked younger, so that you wouldn't, because there are rules about
Oh
how,
yeah, yeah,
like what hours you can work. There's no way to do a show like 90210 with an actual 15, 16, 17-year-old because of
yeah.
the shooting time.
Look at
Um,
Ralph Macchio. He played a teenager until he was well into his 40s,
yeah.
didn't he? Or
When
30s?
everyone, but it does crack me up when people are like, how did anyone ever believe any of these people were like teenagers? And it's like teenagers used to look a lot older than they do now. Like, go look at some 80s yearbooks and like We looked
Well, look at
older
us.
then.
I mean, we're 50, right? When my parents were 50, they
Yeah.
looked 50. When my grandparents were
Yeah.
50, they were grandparents, right? They looked like the grandparent
Yeah.
you see on TV, right?
Yeah, that was why sort of as I got close to 50, it was sort of wigging me out because 50 for me always was. I remember when my grandmother turned 50, and it was on a Sunday, and she was very much a churchgoer. And I'm sure, again, Grandma, if you can hear this and there is an afterlife, you're welcome to like stomp on me to let me know that there is one for telling. And but so the church she went to, like the tradition was on your birthday, you had to put pennies in the collection plate for how old you were. So my friend Jennifer and I collected pennies for the year my grandma turned 50, and we both dropped pennies into the collection plate for her. So my grandma put her 50 in, and we put, so basically based on collection, we're like, it's like you're 150, Grandma, but we also did it in pennies. My grandma just put 2 quarters in there. She was like, we're not gonna, and we counted out each of the pennies separately. So she put in her 50 cents and we did the pennies. And she had to stand up there while to like, I don't know, we were like 4, maybe 5. As we counted out each penny one by one. 1, 2, and then I finished and then Jenny went. So yeah, that again, children don't always so yeah, anyway, I've thought about that a lot and I feel really bad. I'm sorry, Grandma. Um, but yeah, I don't yeah, anyway, we're old. It was grandparent age.
I can remember being, because my
Yeah.
grandparents lived on a lake, and I can remember being a kid and going over there
Oh,
for, during the summer school and stuff. And I
and,
love you, Briscoe. I
yeah,
love you so
right.
much, Briscoe.
It's fine. I make the joke too though, because Ed's older than me. And I'll never be as old as Ed. So
That's right.
um,
I'm an old man.
but that's why I make the joke is because, like I don't I mean, this is probably the first time I've directly on stream for prosperity admitted to the actual age of it. Um, but like there's no way you don't know. Every time I have to make sure people know I saw the original Star Wars 7 times in a theater before it was called
Right.
home. Like there's no way that's possible if I'm not almost that age. So I'm just saying. Um, but age is
Yeah,
different.
it's hard to talk about, like having original, 1974 GI Joes when I was growing up. When
Right.
it's like, did your uncle give them to you? It's like, no, they were
No.
bought for me at the store.
And my first Star Wars figure was the Death Squad Commander because that's all we could find in stores. And Kenner took their sweet time shipping out my early bird figures. So it's probably also because my parents mailed them a little bit later because of the shipping and handling. Because I was for Christmas, I got that early bird kit, and I didn't get my figures till like
The first Star Wars
I don't know
toy that I
later.
had was the land speeder, and I got
Yeah,
C3PO with it. And I
that's
remember
a good
being,
cover though.
yeah, I remember being so upset though because all I wanted was Luke Skywalker with
Yeah,
the extendable lightsaber that come out of his arm. It's like, how can I have the land speeder and not Luke? So then, I got like a little bit of money for my birthday, of course, and my
yeah.
mom took me to the store, because that was Sunday and the stores were closed. So the next day we went to the store and got my Luke Skywalker. We found him.
Well, that then first Christmas that 78 that they were out. By then, I'd already gone through some of my Star Wars figures. I excuse me, had gotten the early bird kit by then. But I'd already broken and lost my first Luke and Leia. I went through a lot of Leia figures, believe it or not. I'm sure it's hard to believe based on this channel and what I talk about, but I had like 5 or 6 at least of the first Leia. But that first Christmas of 78, I got the Death Squad Commander, the Jawa with the vinyl cape, and a sand person because basically those were the last 3 figures they released. Those are easier to find.
Yeah.
So those were the first ones I got in store, and then the early bird came in, and then that Christmas I got. My mom bought another Luke, another Leia, another R2 because I'd already lost and broken the R2. His head clicked. It was too fun to just
Oh
sit there
yeah.
for hours and click until it broke. And but she got them and she sort of lined them all up, so it was like one big long rectangular thing with like the car, like top typed on top of it. It was really cool. And I opened it and it was like she had it laid out like Luke, Leia, Han, Vader, C3PO, R2D2, and the Stormtrooper. She still Chewbacca and Obi-Wan Kenobi were hard to find in our area, so I didn't get another. And there was another Jawa in the cloth cape. And I can't. I think I said this before we started live, but my mom loved the Jawa, so she bought a couple of those. And so I got another Jawa because you had to have 2 or 3 to play the movie, right? And then I got the Land Speeder and the Land of the Jawas playset and a Cantina. So that was my Star Wars Christmas that year. It was cool.
I remember I got the Mego General Lee. It was supposed to come with a 3 3/4 inch bow and Luke Duke. And when I got it, Mego had actually run out of production of the 2 figures. So my General Lee didn't have any figures with it. And I got a little card that said you can mail away and they'll send you the figures for free once they get them in stock. And I remember doing that, but for me, there was plenty of characters that could substitute Spawn Luke Duke at that point in time, between G.I. Joe and Adventure People and everybody else. So
at least it wasn't Coy and Vance.
Oh yes, Coy and Vance, exactly.
Did they even get?
No, they never did anything for those poor guys.
I just a few days ago was on a deep dive looking into whatever happened to him. One of them, the dark-haired one, has passed away. He had went into the hospital for like some sort of heart procedure, and about a month later, passed away. Natural causes, of course. But the 2 of them remained really good friends through the years, and sort of remained in, like the blonde one who's still with us. I know this is horrible. I don't remember their real names. Yeah. And I don't remember which one is Coy and which one is.
I don't remember either. I never really cared for those 2 guys.
I wasn't happy about that myself.
Yeah.
But like they still hung out, and the one who had passed away was like godfather to the other one's son and stuff. So so it was cool that out of the train wreck that situation was, that they were able to build a friendship and support each other and be friends, because that doesn't always happen in this.
No, because like even Tom Wopat and John Schneider have gone back and forth on whether they're friends or not friends, and
like it seems like in general there was just a lot of vitriol between the 2, probably over which one was the bigger star.
Yeah, it was definitely about who was the best looking and who was the best, the most popular and everything else, right? And of course, everybody liked Bo Duke more than Luke Duke, so
that's true. Bo was cooler. I always prefer. Of course, it was all about Daisy Duke for me. So, because she was cool and she kicked butt.
Daisy was pretty badass. Didn't know it back in the day, but she was pretty badass, actually.
Yeah.
I was always a fan of Roscoe and Boss Hogg because they just made me laugh as a kid.
Oh, they were very, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, I found them funny, but I grew up in the South, so I immediately, they reminded me of law enforcement in my area.
Yeah.
It's a caricature, but not as much as you would think. So.
Yep.
But
I remember one time I was with my parents and we were going on a vacation somewhere, and we weren't even going that far south, maybe to Pennsylvania. And I remember my dad got pulled over and my mom's, of course, freaking out. And the guy got out of the car and he was like, typical Southern sheriff that you see like in Smokey and the Bandit, and all those characterizations of the Southern sheriff. And all I remember is my dad saying, "Who is this Boss Hogg motherfucker?" That stuck with me forever as a child. It was just like,
it's a good question, Brick. Brick has a question that You can pay to rent it on YouTube, apparently.
Yeah, on YouTube and Amazon, I think you can rent it right now. It
Yeah.
usually comes out free every couple of months though on like
Yeah.
Tubi or YouTube. So if you can't watch it right now, I would just wait
Yeah.
unless you don't
Which
mind
is,
paying the $3.99 for a movie that's 50 years old.
yeah. Yeah, I I have that on DVD somewhere. I need to go. Most of my DVDs are in storage from the last movie.
Yeah, I have it on DVD too. Just like the original Planet of the Apes series, I have the entire series and the TV show on DVD, and it's like I don't even have anything to play it on. So what's the point of worrying about where they are?
Right? Yeah, I do, but it's so rare for me to get up from watch something on TV.
Yeah,
Mostly it's on my computer. I don't watch stuff. I'll sometimes watch YouTube on my phone, but mostly I watch TikTok and Instagram Reels on the phone. If it's not on YouTube, like Netflix, even at this point, I'll just put it on the computer though when I'm doing coloring pages for a video or whatever. Once I run out of all of my friends to watch, and there's no more replay stuff to do, then I will pull up Netflix. Netflix right now has Eli Roth's Thanksgiving on there, so I need to go watch that.
I go through these phases where I really like to watch movies, and I'll just watch like every movie I can possibly think of and search it
Yeah,
up. And then I go through these phases where it's like I can't even focus long enough to watch a movie for an hour and a half or 2 hours. It's like,
yeah, I do that too. It's annoying, but what'll be good is I'm taking a little time off in June, which I'm doing pre-records and stuff to fill that time. And I'll have regular content because I've got it all. It's all being filmed and edited right now not as we speak, but over the next few days. But I'm taking a couple weeks off in June, and my goal is I read books, i.e., I listen to a lot of audiobooks, but I've actually got a stack of things I'm going to read and a stack of movies that I'm just going to sit and watch on the television. And then with some luck, I'll get to travel a little bit.
I've been trying to do more reading. Unfortunately, I can only get through about a chapter before my eyes hurt so bad because my eyesight is so awful. But
Yeah, my eyes just it's from all the computer stuff. Like I didn't used to need glasses, but now I do. So
I
yeah,
really
reading is
enjoy reading and always
challenging.
have. So it's a struggle.
Yeah, that is why I've sort of leaned into audiobooks because
Yep.
no matter what happens with my eyes, the audiobooks,
Yeah, I do listen to a lot of audiobooks now. So
I like it. It's just not the same. I don't
yep.
retain the story quite the same way, and that's disappointing. But
Yeah, I usually listen to the same book 3 or 4 times just to grasp what I could have grasped in, reading one
yeah,
sentence. But it is what it is. So,
yeah, it's true.
or else I fall asleep. Like poor Luke, he wrote that book, got it published, and then he was reading it to me because I couldn't read the damn thing, and
I
I'd
remember that.
I'd always pass out.
I
I'm
don't.
like, well, it is. It's just
I
like
need
you're
to
reading.
double check. I feel like I bought Luke's book, but I haven't gotten around to reading it yet. Is it still on Amazon?
Yeah, it's still on Amazon.
I'll ping you later if I find that I didn't buy it then,
Yeah.
so that I can buy it and read it. Because gotta support the kids and their creative and it sounded like, I mean, based on his description of it, it sounded like it was pretty good. So
It is a wild ride down a sci-fi base of a story with a whole bunch of existential stuff around it. It's a trip.
It's pretty cool. So yeah, I'll check later because I need stuff to read for my time off. Oh my goodness, we're a little over 2 hours. How are you doing, Ed?
I'm good. I finished just a minute ago.
You just finished. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that makes sense because I'm almost finished, and there's no way, as slow as I am at this these days, that
I've just been adding some shading and stuff as I look at it and think where I need to add some stuff. Unfortunately, the only bad thing about like this page is that there is a lot of brown and a lot of because the Cyclops whole costume was basically shades of brown and tan.
Yeah, I kind of cheated there. I put some blue in there.
Yeah, I put a little purple and some reddish brown.
Yeah, I used to, the Prismacolor is called henna, but it's like a reddish brown. And then there's some Tuscan red, which is brownish, so it's all in a similar hue, but it's a little different.
Brick says he's going to subject his kids to Krull soon. That's good, Brick.
You
They got
should do
subjected
that.
to the Sinbad show, so they definitely need to see Krull.
I think though Krull would be fun for kids. If kids enjoy Star Wars, if it's a kid who likes Star Wars,
Yeah.
and they can sort of
Luke really enjoyed Krull. I made
yeah.
him watch it with me, and he really enjoyed it.
It's been a good 5-6 years since I've rewatched it, so I can't say it holds up now.
Because we
But my
watched.
memory of the last time I watched it was the story is solid.
Yep.
Most of the effects are practical, so those hold up as pretty well. Practical effects are good that way; they will usually hold up.
Luke and I had watched that King Arthur with Clive Owen and Keira Knightley, and, which I love that movie. And so we had watched that, and then we were talking about other movies. He's like, "Well, what other ones do you have, Dad?" Because he likes, the sci-fi fantasy stuff. And I was like, "Oh, we got to watch Krull." So we found it. He really enjoyed it. He was like, it was so. For him, of course, it was, well, the special effects aren't computer generated, so it's not the same. But it's like, he's like, wow, they were really done well. So,
one thing I will say is the copy that I own on DVD has not been remastered, which means that the effects pretty much look like they did to my eyes in 1983, 84 when I would have watched it on VHS. If they've remastered it, it's possible the effects have not aged. Look worse because sometimes that upgrade does not do any favors to especially latex effects.
That's why I really liked when Star Wars when they released the original Star Wars without the editing and the remastering and all that. That was so cool because you could hear the actual film and see the actual effects the way they were when we first saw it.
Yeah, a lot of the Star Wars stuff stands. Some of it does not, but some of it really stands up. So, all right, I'm gonna pop in really quick, and we're gonna check in with the comments. Hello, Bobby. Thanks for popping in. I know you've got so much happening right now. And Brick. Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. I missed a bunch of stuff. Hedgehog Action is cooking dinner, and he's popping on to say, hey. Hi, Hedgehog. I need to get him on here sometime to color.
I wonder what he's having for dinner.
I don't know. I'm going to ask later because... yeah, I can see why she would, but sometimes you have to put people in their place. We call my aunt Sylvia because when she was a kid, had those silver caps in her mouth. And she was mean. She's a mean person. So anytime you want to win a fight with her, just like, sure, Sylvia. And it still takes her back to being 5 and my mom, who was like 3 or 4, teasing her and calling her Sylvia. If you wonder where I get it, it's all my mom's fault. And Bobby again, but I'm just working my way back down. I get them mixed up when I'm saying the names. I don't because the movies are so totally different.
Oh, I hated Call the Conqueror. That was such a badly done movie.
It was of its time.
Yeah. I really like Kevin's Zorbo and like the Hercules series, but when he did Call, it was just they tried to translate that same character into a different universe.
It just doesn't always work.
Yeah.
So, that's what is interesting to me, Brick, is how like one kid loved it, the other didn't, and it's like, but it's the same movie, and it's I don't know. I love stuff like that. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, Luke loves some of the Sinbad movies and some of the, like, we watched Jason and the Argonauts. He liked those, but my daughters forget it. They just can't even.
I remember liking Jason and the Argonauts. I liked Clash of the Titans. I think that helped.
Oh yeah, the original Clash of the Titans was awesome.
The Sinbads. Like I said, I've been doing a research project for things that brought a lot of those into my like, hey, remember you never watched this shit. You should watch it. So I'm probably gonna watch those. Those are on the list. If I don't get to them before my vacation, definitely during vacation, I need to fill my mind with things that aren't, as much as I love all of the stuff I color, I haven't watched a lot of media that doesn't relate to research for things. So, I mean, that I'm going to color, not other things. So, Alex hasn't seen Krull in years. You should watch. Maybe I should figure out a way to start doing watch parties. Because I have a program that would make it feasible where we don't have to worry about copyright strikes. So
That'd be cool.
it would be private. We couldn't stream it for the world to watch, but
Right.
I could throw some private parties for people. And I want to do stuff like that. You guys are my buds and my friends, my peeps. Anyway, my phone camera that I film everything on is like, girl, you about to die. So really quick, let's show the people where you're at.
I am finished. Let me
excellent.
Hold it up a little higher.
Yeah, flip it around. It's upside down on the screen.
Yeah, it's upside down because everything's backwards.
So that looks really good, Ed. And what I'm going to say to the people watching at home, Ed admitted he hasn't colored in years, and that looks really good. So just my reminder, Alice and Troy Retro Toy Princess telling you, anyone, just get back on the bicycle. That's good for you.
Yeah, I enjoy coloring. I just, I've shaded some things in here and there, for Luke or whatever, but sit down and actually color a page now. That's why I was like, those Mezco Gomez pictures I sent you, I was so excited to
those are really cool.
Thanks, Brick.
Really quick, this is what mine looks like. And this isn't to downplay what Ed did. It's just I do this almost every day, even if I don't make a video out of it. This is every day coloring things. Anyone can pretty much accomplish this if you practice something every day. So if you look at my stuff and like, I could never do that. Yes, you could. You just need to do more.
I really like.
And if you don't have time for that, that's fine. But Ed did beautifully. And Ed, this is the first time in forever he's colored. So just that's your reminder, guys. You can do stuff like this if you've got time. And even if you don't have time to make it look super fancy, still do what you can. Have a good time. This is good for your mental health.
It's all about relaxing, right? That's what it's really about. That's what I do with like building diodes. It's not, I don't really care what they look like. I just do it because it's relaxing to get my mind off of, everything. So
hey, Wraith Mace.
Wraith,
great video the other day, by the way, for the Power of the Force 2.
Yeah. His was really good, and really liked Chris's. I gotta watch Cobb's after this. I haven't had a chance.
And luckily, he was there the other night to correct me because I kept calling it Warcraft, but it's Warhammer. So
yeah,
because I just watch this. I don't know any. It's kid stuff. It's for the kids. I'm too old for it. Yeah, and what I will say to that, Brooke, really quick, is the Star Wars stuff we did was 1977. When Kenner had no idea Star Wars was going to blow up. They just needed a lot of product really quick that they threw together. The cool thing about this Krull coloring book, like the Sectars book that you and I did, it was by Marvel Comics. So these books were set up to look sort of like coloring book comic books. So it's way more, it's like the Crystar books I have. Marvel Comics did a really good job of putting these coloring books together so that they would be engaging. So that the art is good. I don't know if I know the artist on the Krull book, but it would have been someone who was doing art at Marvel at the time. So they approach a lot of these the same way they would a comic book, and it's by some of the artists at Marvel. So it's possible somebody like the G.I. Joe books, I want to say are probably is it Herb Trimpe? I think that's how you say his name. I feel pretty certain that it's one of their G.I. Joe artists. So not Michael Golden, but one of them.
Did you say you ever found A-Team coloring books?
I have one A-Team coloring book that I have finished scanning. I have one that I bought online, but it's incomplete, so I need to get that. But yeah, I've got some A-Team books that I'm cleaning up and putting together because I've got plans, but definitely when it's time to color some of those, if you want to come, definitely you're invited to come back where we can schedule it.
Absolutely.
And once I get the A-Team stuff ready, we'll definitely talk about that. So
sounds good.
Yep.
What's up, Cobb?
Yeah, Cobb popping in. Cobb also had his Power of the Force 2 video pop yesterday with Yoda, so definitely check that out. Everyone's saying hi to Cobb right as we're wrapping up.
That's all right. Me and Cobb and Thanos spent a lot of time together last night. So.
I do. And I will say, Brick, if it all goes well, there will be like a month of like A-Team content. So like I'm trying to, as part of my break is so I can refuel for what I'm dubbing season 2, and season 2 is going to have lots of fun stuff. So hopefully there will be an 18-month. Anyway, with that, my phone has just told me I'm about to lose the camera the picture's on.
Yes. It's time to go bye-bye.
So it's time to go. Really quick, Ed, where can the people find you?
They can find me right on my YouTube channel, Akxion_figs. And I will be on Hella Dope tonight with my partner in crime, Travis, Mr. Wonderful. The Toy Lead's taking over. We're not doing the show this time for them. They're going to be there. We're going to be guest hosting. And then Tuesday, Travis and I will be discussing pop culture influence on toy lines, and
nice.
That'll be 9:00 on my channel. And then, you know, I mod for Lawrence's Punk with Toys and for Rad Nom for Random Dioramas Friday Night Chill. So I'm always around on those. So, and I've been popping into Payne's on Wednesday since he's trying to get his show back on, but doing it on a different night with a different platform right now. So
yeah, well, I definitely recommend everyone go find that. Those are all channels that I watch and enjoy. So definitely recommend them. I'm often in the comments over at Ed's. So
yes.
With that, really quick, this is not quite finished. Obviously, I didn't finish Dog Collar Guy, whatever his name is, Dog Collar Man. He will be. I'll finish this, pop it up on Instagram later. So those who are watching, if you want to see what it looks like, it will be on Instagram. retro_toy_princess. Retro Toy Princess. It'll be there. Also, if you're on my other account, Allison of Troy, it'll also pop up over there. But definitely most of the channel stuff is here. Sometimes my other Instagram will have cat pictures or politics stuff, and if you're not interested in that, I don't blame you. Not everyone needs to know everything about everyone's life. If you just want channel stuff, the Retro Toy Princess is where to go. That one will 100% be free of politics, recipes, cats, and throwing shade at people who are shady. So, and with that, there's the Power of the Force 2 thing happening this month. Hashtag May the Power of the Force, POTF. A lot of really cool creators are participating, so look for that hashtag. My community tab has a post about it, and I've been posting daily with links to whatever videos going up. So please go take a time to watch those reviews, follow those creators, subscribe to them, give them a like, watch the video. It's all about building up a cool community of cool people doing cool things about toys in a positive way, because I think our little corner of ToyTube that we're all on is really fun, positive place. And let's make that stronger and cooler and help people find us. So with that, I'll have my regular set of videos all coming out. So just, if you like what I'm doing, they'll be there. Next Sunday, I'll be here live with Hyperdelic, coloring some Masters of the Universe. So
that'd be fun. Hyper's a cool guy.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I love his enthusiasm. That's I think the easiest way to it's jubilant enthusiasm, and I kind of like it. Nobody else has his vibe, so definitely.
Yep, absolutely.
And Alex, our friend Black Phoenix 77, has the perfect I will see you all in various chats today, because that's what we do. We go from chat to chat. We make community. Thank you so much, Briscoe, and I'm glad you made it today. Appreciate your time and hanging out with us, especially because we sometimes went to dark places and things that are just.
It happens.
10 years from now, I'll be like, we said what on YouTube ad? Anyway. All right. And with that, I'm Allison Troy, Retro Toy Princess, and we're out.